Hello and welcome to the GT Masters special event. It is the Interlagos 3-hour with the GTEs and GT1s combined together. So we're just getting into qualifying. We're literally just starting now. So this will be good. We got 20 minutes for qualifying. As all of the cars are making their way out for the out lap. Overlay showing everything I need it to do. Put the driver's name on, following Don Pittman at the moment. Dan Bartush starting his flying lap here. Unfortunately, don't have any timing overlays. All my overlays were playing up on me, so I don't unfortunately have any way to bring up timing. Cars just moved out of his way. And he's gone off track, so that'll be an aborted first lap. So we switch to Liam starting his flying lap here. We might try and go on board with Liam here. To go through turn 2 into turn 3. Love the sound of the Corvette, one of the best sounding GT1 cars, other than the Aston Martin, obviously. Getting in through turns 4 and 5. I might need to turn my racing down just a little bit, it's very loud. Especially in my ears. We have Don Pittman setting the fastest lap at the moment with a 1:30.4, followed by Tim Sullivan with a 1:31.3. Liam comes into the last 2 corners here. See where his time ends up. It looked like a pretty clean lap, all things considered. Liam goes to P2 with a 1:30.7. So very close, only 0.3 in it between the top 2 at the moment. A second between the top 3. We'll see how the others are going along. Got an out lap here. Let's see where we can end up here. Nice Corvette. Dan Bartush takes it to the top with a 1:30.15. Relatively close throughout the field. Cooper Cotterill slots into P6 with a 1:31.5. Tim Sullivan moves himself up to P2 with a 130.37. Yes, true. It is not raining, so Liam won't have an unfair advantage here. Jeremy goes into 10th at the moment with a 146.4. Probably still getting those tire temps up, and we'll keep riding with Jeremy here as we try and get another flying lap. See if he can't improve from his current P10. Car looks nice coming in to turn 4 there. Looking very planted, very stable. Not unsettled under brakes or anything, which is always a good sign. And hopefully he can carry this through to the race. Don Pittman takes it even closer with P2 with a 130.16. It's very, very tight at the top of the field. Only 100th of a second in it at the moment. It's very, very close. Jeremy Greentree jumps himself up into P3 and only 0.2 of a second off the back of the podium, off the back of the lead at the moment. It's shaping up to be a very, very competitive race. The gap over the entire field only been about 1.7 seconds to P10. Hopefully PJ can grab some more pace out of that car and move himself a little bit closer and a little bit further up the field. Looking like only about 0.4 of a second separates the top 5 at the moment, with only half a second between the top 6 cars running at the moment. Looks like some drivers still yet to set a time. Or my overlay might not be showing it, but at the moment, it's only 10 cars have set a lap time. As Don goes to the top, followed by Kyra. With both breaking the 30s, Jeremy Greentree as well. 3 cars, sub 1 minute 30 in the 129s. So very, very quick out there this afternoon. It's looking very good for a competitive race. So we do have someone else jumping in. We're up to 11 cars, still only separated by 1.7 seconds. But as I said, hopefully PJ can grab a little bit more time out of that car. Jump over to Steve, currently running P7, and about 0.9 off the back of the lead. Not sure if he's still on a flying lap, as Brady Buchanan has taken himself back to the pit lane. There's a nice little bop going on with these to make the GT1s and the GTEs pretty comparable. I do know that they changed it up a little bit, as the GT1s have a little bit less power and the GTEs have a lot less fuel. So it should be pretty interesting. A lot going on with the compulsory pit stops as well, as there's 3 compulsory pit stops in this event. And there is 30 seconds after the completion of the pit time that a car must remain stationary in the pit lane. And And GT1s have an extra 2 seconds tacked onto the back of that. So that will be interesting for pit strategy. We'll have to see what happens, as well as if they do end up with a time penalty, the only time they can serve that during the race is through the 3 compulsory pit stops. So it is going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be a juggling act of making sure you don't get the penalties and that you don't also give yourself a extra pit stop potentially with damage and the likes. It is a long race. It's all about keeping calm, keeping the car running consistent, and try not to make too many mistakes. The less times you have to travel down the pit lane in a race, the better. So hopefully the guys can keep it all under control and there's not too many issues at the end of that as Steve McDonald comes through to complete another lap. Does not improve. He does a 130.4. So we jump over to Tim Sullivan, who's currently the 5th place car, running almost identical lap time to Liam right in front of him. So it should be quite the interesting little battle between them two, and only a 10th of a second back to Dan Bartush in P6. So fingers crossed that we have some good battles out here with the pace that these guys are showing in qualifying. So we follow Cooper Cottrell, jump on the nose of the BMW as we run through this tight, twisty infield section of the track. Using a lot of curb there, but not as much on the exit. So a lot of entry curb and apex curb, but not much on the exit of the track. Using a lot of exit there coming into the second last corner. Nice big wide run out onto the exit apron, maximizing the exit speed, which will give you the best run towards the start finish line. And we'll see if Cooper can't find any more time out of this car and jump up any more positions. So we cross the line, and he does indeed improve into P9 with a 130.848. Very, very quick. The guys at the front are just getting quicker and quicker. Don Pittman just setting a 129.454, followed very closely by Jeremy Greentree with a 129.6. So we jump back in the cockpit of Brady Buchanan. Lovely sound of the Corvette GT1. Absolutely love the throaty sound of this car. It is just absolutely beautiful. Looks like he is on a flying lap himself. A lot of apex curbing and more on the exit again, as all of them trying to maximize their exit speeds and get the best run out here to the start finish line. We will see if Brady can't find any more time to catch or pass back past Cooper Cotterill, as Harry Aaron sets the next time with a 130.794. He jumps himself up into P9, and it's an unfortunate spin for Brady there. So jump back to the TV cameras with Steve. Getting very close, only about 5 minutes left in qualifying. The times looking pretty set here. This is still the fastest time with Don Pittman and his 129.454. Jeremy Greentree only 0.04 of a second behind him with a 129.494. So they are very, very close, and it will be a very, very competitive race between those two cars. We try and find the Don Pittman out on track as he comes through to start his next flying lap. See if he can't improve that time to make that little bit of a gap away from Jeremy, who seems to be not far behind him on track. Two very, very different Corvettes following each other. We've got the GTE here, which is not not as throaty V8 as the GT1 following. So very, very different cars, finding almost the same amount of pace and lap time, maybe in very different places, as the GT1 I think might have a little bit more down this long straight and down the front straight, but the GTE might potentially be a little bit better through this tight twisty section. Jesus Christ. But other than that, very, very well balanced in performance between this group of cars. It's nice to see all the different cars sort of running together on track. Shame not to see the Aston Martin out on track. Do love the sound of the V12 Aston Martin GT1 just absolutely tearing around the track. It's looking like a very, very clean lap here again from Don. Hopefully we can see some more improvement on this lap time. And see if he can't break down past the 129.4s. See if he can break. He could potentially, if he gets enough of a run, potentially break to the 128s. I'm not sure. But he is very, very quick out there. He does a 130.2, so no improvement on that lap. And it doesn't look like Jeremy, who was following him, finds much improvement either. Still very, very close lap times out there. Liam being only a 10th behind Kyra in third and fourth. And only for the 2/10 back to 5th place in Tim Sullivan. As we do jump over to Kyra in the beautiful Porsche RSR. This thing is an absolutely beautiful car. The sound is absolutely phenomenal. Porsches always sound really, really nice, so I'm really happy with that. Ooh, very, very wide on exit there for Kyra. Bit of a wiggle jumping off the curb, but nothing. No loss. Only potentially maybe a lap time loss. It wasn't outlap, so thankfully not ruining a flying lap by getting the tires getting off track and getting the wobbles. So we now follow Kyra down through turn 1 and 2. Looking very, very clean through there. A lot of curb exit entering turn 3. A lot of curb on exit. Might even be an off track there. That's a long way off track for Kyra, but using every inch available to try and find any 10th of a second to catch these two cars in front, just to break that 3/10 down to a little bit closer and maybe be a little bit, maybe even jump into P2 and get involved in this fight between Don and Jeremy. With only a minute remaining in qualifying, this looks like the last couple of laps for people coming up to the start line now. This will be the last flying lap attempt they get. It'll be very interesting to see how this goes. Looks like Tim just moves out of the way for Kyra there as he's on an out lap. Come up to the start finish line, hugging it close, shortening the track as much as possible. Doesn't look like there was any improvement. It looks like it was an off track at the exit of turn 3. That is really, really unfortunate, because it was, other than that very wide exit of turn 3, it was a very clean lap, which unfortunately has put Kyra out. For the final lap of qualifying, we will jump across to Matthew Young and see if we can't improve his time here from P7. He's very close to the back of Dan Bartush, so still very competitive in its own right. It's still 7th place and looking very, very fast out there in the Corvette GTE. Come in through the sweeping right-hander up to the hairpin. Start getting into the tight and technical section of the track. Probably the slowest part of the track here, going through these hairpins. deceptively hard hairpins, as that previous hairpin does slowly close up. As it looks like Tim has gone off the track, and that is going to be the end of his qualifying there. He even hit the wall hard enough to get a meatball. It's unfortunate there for Tim. Very wide for Matthew. See if that's given him anything on the run to the line. See if he can't find that less than a tenth of a second to pass Dan Bartush and jump up into P6. No, it looks like he did off track at the end there. So that is the end of his qualifying too. Looks like everyone's coming to the end of their qualifying. We'll jump to Liam as he's coming to the wall towards the end of his lap here. Coming through to the start finish line now. Can we get an improvement from Liam? No, it is also an end lap, so it looks like that will be close to the end of qualifying here for the GT Masters. 3 hours of Interlagos running through order. It's just disappeared from me, and my timing has played up, so I do not have that easily accessible, but we will run through the order soon. Jumping into warm-up.
Everybody. So just a bit of housekeeping, of course.
That race control.
So first thing is, remember, standing start is a short run down to turn 1. So just be aware on that first lap.
I forgot to turn this off.
For a lot of you, this may be your first time with live stewarding. So just if you have any issues on track, because there is only myself and Craig in the booth here. We may not be able to catch everything as it happens. So if you have any issues, just sing out.
Okay, just muting the voice chat. We don't want to be hearing all of that. Apologies, I forgot to do that beforehand. So let's just get a little bit of a race control commentary as we jump into warm up. That. Jump over to Tim as he comes through turns 4 and 5. Just a quick 10-minute warm-up here as we run through all of this. So I did see at the end, it was Don Pittman from Jeremy Greentree, then Kyra Krassenberg and Liam Aycock were your top 4. From memory, I could not find my timing, so we will have to run through it when they form up and do a quick run through the grid. As Don has just pulled over on this side of the track here at the back. I don't know what that was, but he's off running again towards turns 4 and 5 here. Just nothing to do. Through turns 8 and 9. A lot of small conjoined corners. Turns 4 and 5, 6 and 7, both joined by the tiniest little straight that basically makes them look like a flowing corner. Going into turn 10, probably the slowest corner on the track there in turn 10. Coming in through 11, down to 12 before we get the run to the line with the few kinks in this straight that basically make it a not so straight run to the start line. I'm just going to step away for just a second. I need to refresh my water while they're in warm-up. I will leave this running for you guys so you can watch cars running around track. And with 20 seconds left in warm-up, we'll get ready to go to the racing here very, very shortly. Following Matthew Young run around the track at the moment. Over as warm-up comes to an end here for the Interlagos 3 hour. Jump across and run through the starting order. We have Don Pittman off pole, followed by Jeremy Greentree and then Kyra Krassenberg in P3. P4 is Liam Haycock, followed by Tim Sullivan in P5. In P6, we have Dan Bartush. And then coming from row 4, we have Matthew Youngs alongside Steve McDonald, followed by Harry Arendt and Brady Buchanan. And bringing up the last 2 rows are Cooper Cotterill and PJ Whiteman. So a nice 12-car grid getting ready to go for 3 hours of racing. About to start very, very shortly. It is a standing start by the looks of things.
Green flag, green flag.
Green flag, we are off and running. It looks like a very good start for the front row as we immediately go out 3-4 wide going into turn 1. Don Pittman getting jumped by both Dan Bartush and Jeremy Greentree. Looks like there was an accident in the back with Kyra Krassenberg ending up backwards. That's a really, really rough start for Kyra after starting so strong up near the front of the field. Jump back to Jeremy Greentree, who is now 1.3 seconds ahead of Liam Haycock in a big battle with Dan Bartush and Don Pittman. The very, very aggressive start to this 3 hour as Don goes up the inside of Dan, doesn't make the move stick, and we end up with a little bit of a follow leader here. Don's still looking everywhere he can, trying to get back to the front. He did have a very, very fast qualifying time, so we will have to see how that goes. If he can make some recovery back to the front after that start. It looks like he's a lot slower here at the start of this race, maybe just trying to get the tire temp up compared to the GT1 Corvettes. Seem to be just driving away here. But Jeremy Greentree got a really, really good start there. He's running very, very strong out the front, being caught by both Liam and Dan. That's a very, very fast start for the GT1 Corvettes. They are harassing the GTE Corvettes, but I feel like once those tire temps come up, those GTEs might be able to just run away and get a bit more pace back into this, as Don Pittman still there, being harassed now by Brady Buchanan, only 6 tenths back off of him. As we do have Liam making a move up the inside, trying to get past Jeremy Greentree. Jeremy runs out really wide, a lot of room given between the two, as Liam does make his way to the front for the first time in this race on lap 2. Jeremy's not just giving it to him, he has stuck up the inside. He kept it around the outside for a long time, and he's back up the inside at the hairpin. This has brought Dan Bartush back into the fight as Liam's back up the inside. This is really, really good racing between these two. They've been side by side for a long while here, from turns 4 through to turn 10. So Liam still harassing the back of Jeremy here, and Dan only 4 tenths of a second off the back. He's just sniffing around, waiting to see if one of these two come together, then he might be able to sneak through and get to both of them. Or if they push each other too hard, he might be able to just save his tires, save his fuel, sitting behind these two. and make a jump in the pit lane as Liam again goes around the outside, going down the front straight of Jeremy. They're running side by side into turn 1. Dan still just sniffing in the background, but this is also bringing Don back into this fight. This is now a 4-way fight for the lead, and we are only on lap 3 of the race. There's still almost 3 hours of racing to go, boys. We need to settle this down before you come together. Looks like Dan is now going to try and make a move onto Liam. So Bartush trying to pass Haycock. Liam moves defensively, has a look at Jeremy at the same time. And it looks like Dan has run a little bit wide as Don has snuck up the inside of him. All this fighting, if they keep this up, will bring Brady Buchanan into this, which will make it a 5-way fight for the lead. Further back, it looks like Steve McDonald and Cooper Cottrell with Tim Sullivan are having a really good fight here. Cooper there, followed by Tim, all over the back of Steve McDonald. So this is looking like a really, really good race already. It's a 3-way fight at the lead, 4-way fight at the lead still, followed by Steve here, who's now just sort of broken away from Cooper, who is still being harassed on the back by Tim Sullivan. They're within 0.4 of a second now. It looks like Liam's making another run at Jeremy down the front straight. This is another side-by-side coming towards turn 1 here, as we do have... Ooh, as Jeremy sends it back up the inside. Again, their fighting is just going to bring Don and Dan back to their fight. Those two cars are very, very quick, and if these two keep up this fighting, it's going to be a very, very long race at this rate, the way this is going already. Liam all the way to the inside, trying to get the run. Oh, a little bit of door banging with Jeremy Greentree there, trying to give himself a little bit more space down the inside, but Jeremy's just going to hang it around the outside. Oh, as they come together, Liam off the track into the wall. It's going to be a trip to pit lane for Liam. That's probably done some wheel damage. Not the greatest start for Liam, but not much that can be done there. We will just jump back here. Liam up the inside, tries to get the run onto Jeremy, squeezes towards the curb, and Jeremy just trying to move off the curb, just tags the right rear. We'll leave that with race control, but a very, very unfortunate accident there. And immediately, we have already got a time penalty for Harry Arendt. So that's unfortunate that he's already had a time penalty in this one. Just jump back through these cameras. So Liam a bit further down the field now than he would like. Brady Buchanan up to P4. Jeremy has dropped down to P3 with that. But Dan, still only half a second back off Don Pittman, so this is still a fight for the lead. We're not even 10 minutes into this race. So this is a very, very fiery race, starting strong. We're not even 10 minutes in. It is a 15-second time penalty going the way of Harry Arendt for avoidable contact. That is unfortunate. It's a rough start for Harry, but it's a long race, a long time to come back from that 15 seconds, especially if there is a safety car for a massive, massive accident through here at turn 10. So definitely a lot of time for him to come back from that penalty. But we look here from Dan and Don, still racing hard, about 8 minutes into this race. So this is shaping up to be a good contest between the two classes. This is a good representation of the Bob as well, with the Corvette GT1 being much, much quicker down this front straight. These long straights are where Liam and Dan are putting all of the pressure over Don and Jeremy. They were really, really fast down here, but then they get to these tighter corners, and it looks like the GTE car can just carry that little bit more corner apex speed than these two, and are able to just run away a little bit quicker and give themselves that gap coming onto these straights that then, as they come through the straights, they've got to make up all that time again as they try and chase them down. We are coming up to the first of the lap traffic with Matthew Young. Oh, very wide for Don and Dan, both very, very wide. Lucky not to get a slowdown going out that wide, so they're all using as much of the racetrack as they possibly can, trying to keep this as competitive as possible. So it looks like Liam has caught up to the back of Steve. He's still got a lot of damage on the back of that car. It's not looking healthy. So he's gonna be nursing that. He's just gonna be trying to get through his first compulsory pit stop window, try and get that damage fixed as much as possible, and sort of make up his time as he can. Definitely got a lot of ground to make up, and as I said, just like Harry, he's got a lot of time to make back up in this 3 hours. We've still got 2 hours 50 minutes of running left to go, so to still be in position 5 with that level of damage on the car is not doing too bad. As we do go back to, it looks like Tim is all over the back of Steve McDonald. Sorry, it was Brady Buchanan being harassed by Liam. Tim goes around the outside of Steve. And it looks like, oh, we've had another accident. And I think Liam has tagged the back of Brady Buchanan and turned him around there. That is unfortunate. Oh, Liam's gone around again. That's really, really unfortunate. This race has just gone from bad to worse for Liam. He's just not had the luck that he wanted. So potentially more damage onto that car from the rear damage that he's already gotten. So we will have to keep an eye on that, as we've got Kyra trying to make their way back through the field. They're on the back of Tim Sullivan now. So a lot of pace in that car. We'll see if they can't make some time back from that lap 1 spin. Looking everywhere they can. Potentially looking around the outside. Very unfortunate start for a few of these cars, but again, 3 hours, a lot of time for things to go wrong for other people. A lot of concentration that needs to be put into these cars. And there's still the chance for a safety car to be called. It's not a high chance, but anything can happen around here. Cooper does a little bit of a blink. Kyra not getting the best run through that section. But still a lot of pace in that Porsche down this straight to catch back up to Tim as he starts to catch back up to the back of Steve for position 4 on track. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. This is a nice 4-car fight. It's spread out a little bit at the front. These 4 cars very, very close in proximity. And again, the guys at the front running very wide. The off-track alerts are lighting up with the way they're going off the track. So they're all using as much as they can. As much as they can for that. Looks like Harry Arendt has had another accident, so that is unfortunate. Jump back and have a little look at that. What's happened to Harry here? It's just all by himself, just rotated around. No damage, no harm done. Going to be a long, long recovery drive for him. As we now jump back to the live pictures with Tim Sullivan all over the back of Steve again, and it looks like Kyra's had another moment in the background. Jump back and see what's happened here. Is it just Porsche doing Porsche things? It is indeed just Porsche doing Porsche things and rotating around. It's really, really unfortunate for Kyra, but definitely not the end of the race just yet. So we jump back to watch Tim do. He does send a dive onto Steve into turn 1. Is he able to make it through? He is. He hangs around the outside of turn 2, going into turn 3. Tim Sullivan finally makes his way around past Steve McDonald as Liam now gets past Kyra, but that very, very upset, unhappy looking car. Brady also looking to make his way past Kyra. Coming down this straight, Kyra runs defensive into the next corner. Just to deter Brady just that little bit. So this is a nice little 3-car fight that we've got going on here. Kyra looking very racy on the back of Liam through this section. Liam's car definitely not happy in these lower speed sections, especially with this damage. It's definitely not going to be helping his situation at all. But hopefully after the pit stops, we can start seeing a little bit more strategy come into this. There is 3 compulsory pit stops. Again, they do have to wait 30 seconds after they are dropped off Jack. It looks like we've also had a moment for PJ Whiteman earlier on. Again, it's another Porsche, just doing Porsche things as he goes down on the brakes, just rotating around. Yeah, just Porsche doing Porsche things. That's just the way this happens. We jump back live with Kyra, Liam, and Brady in there, still locked in this battle. They've not really spread out at all over the last lap, so this time has not really moved, as it looks like Jeremy has caught up to the back of Dan, and now this is a fight for P2. Jeremy looking very aggressive under brakes at the back of Dan's car, and it looks like Matthew Young is now the lap down as Harry Arendt comes into the pits, and I think he gets a pit lane speeding penalty. It just goes from bad to worse for Harry. He's just not having much luck today around Interlagos. Jeremy still all over the back of Dan, trying to get the run through here, knowing that that Dan does have a little bit higher top end speed coming through. As we just hear from race control, the incident between Jeremy Greentree and Liam Haycock is a no further action. So race on, boys. Hopefully Liam can catch back up and get back into his battle with Jeremy later on in this race. As we see, Dan's GT1 Corvette is just that little bit faster down the straight, and it stops Jeremy getting up the inside going into turn 1. Just have to see if Jeremy can't make advantage of his time through the faster sections, slower sections of the track over these big, bulky GT1 cars. He's looking very aggressive through these medium speed corners, all over the back of Dan once again. Don Pittman has seemed to just walk away with this one just a little bit, with all these fights, all these incidents that have been happening slowly but surely. Kyra has got past Liam now and looks to try and run away. They're now about a second apart, with Brady only 4/10 behind Liam. So they're Brady and Liam still locked in that battle after Liam's first initial accident. We've got Jeremy still looking at the back of Dan's car. This would be very, very frustrating to just not be able to do anything while looking at the back of that car, knowing that you get to this front straight and you just have to watch the legs stretch on that GT1 car and sort of just drive away from you every single time. So very, very unfortunate in that sense. And into turn 1, again, Jeremy just closes all that time back up under the brakes. The car is definitely better through the middle and slower speed corners. Jeremy a lot closer this time coming into turn 4. They're not able to get the overspeed that he had on the previous lap, so this has put Jeremy even closer coming into these slower speed corners. It looks like Kyra is now on the back of Cooper Cottrell. Very quickly caught up to Cooper and now looking very, very aggressive on the back of Cooper, trying to make up as much time as possible to get back up to the front, back to the position that they qualified in. And Brady still looking aggressive on the back of Liam as well in the background. So a lot of little battle packs going. Oh, Cooper gets a little bit of a wiggle Kyra decides to try the outside going into the hairpin. That doesn't work. Cooper manages to stay in front. And this is just bringing Liam back to the back of Kyra. And also bringing Brady into this. And we've got another 4-car battle. Again, we've only been racing for about 20 minutes. And the action has just been non-stop. Everybody just wanting to get into these little fights. Not settle into a rhythm very much. Looking like Don is the only one that's been able to sort of get into a rhythm and just drive away from people. And Tim able to drive about a second in front of Steve. So have to see how that's going as Liam now sticks it to the outside of Kyra. They're going 3 wide down the front straight. Kyra getting past Cooper and Liam trying to follow through. He does follow through and then tries to make the move on Kyra to get the double. Unable to make the move on Kyra, but he is able to stick in front of Cooper. And they now get to another straight, and hopefully Liam should be able to get through that. And it's looking like it's just going from bad to worse for Harry. He's had yet another accident. Jump back and see, and he's had to tow back through the pit lane for this one, so either something's happened in a big way or Harry's decided that it's just not worth continuing here. So he's gone off track, and yeah, I think he's just had enough, and he's had to tow back to the pit lane. Unfortunate for Harry, it was a race that has just gone from bad to worse for him. As we now jump back to Brady on the back of Cooper, who's still looking at the back of Liam. And he, in turn, is still looking at the back of Kyra. So they're still very much locked in this 4-car fight at the moment. Tim and Steve seem to be working together to try and bring this gap down onto the back of Jeremy Greentree. And catch back up to that front fight. Jeremy looks to have had a moment as well. He seems to have either slowed down or had a slowdown or something, because he is very much dropped off the back of Dan Bartush, and have to see if it might be that a little bit of aero damage that he got from fighting with Liam, as it looks like Cooper's also now got a penalty on his way into the pit lane. It is a very tricky pit lane here at Interlagos. The pit line is right at the top of the hill, so you're trying to carry as much speed up to that pit line so you don't lose speed on the uphill approach, but it's very, very easy to jump too close to that line. We jump up to look at Liam and Kyra once again. Liam still hanging onto the back. That car is looking very, very much worse for wear. He's had a lot of bad luck here from that accident early on to tag in the back of Brady's car. He's just hoping to get to that pit window as quick as possible. So unfortunately, it looks like Cooper is probably going to go a lap down here with the pit plus the compulsory pit stop time plus his penalty on top of that. Is going to be a very, very long time into the pit lane for Cooper Cotterill, and it's very unfortunate. He's put himself a long way back compared to the other drivers at the moment. Get back to this front straight with Liam and Kyra, and again we just see the pace of the Corvette down this front straight compared to these GTE cars. It is just so aggressively quick in a straight line, but just nothing they can do about those middle speed to lower speed corners. It seems the GTEs are just able to pivot and turn that little bit quicker. Harry being the only Aston Martin and out of this race is very, very unfortunate. Liam extremely wide there, trying to use every inch of track, trying to get every bit of a run. Nothing he can do there into the braking zone of turn 4. Kyra able to stay in front for the moment. He's just stuck looking at the back of this Porsche. They're both very, very quick. They both qualified inside the top 5, so they both know that they are very, very quick and could be a lot further up. Both have had some very unfortunate incidents that have put them further back than they probably would have liked this early on in the race. As we approach the first half hour of the race here, it's been a very, very chaotic start and a very explosive start to this race. This seems to be the only active battle on track. but we will go for a ride on board with Don Pittman out in front, clear track, nothing in sight as we come up towards turn 4, 6th gear, dropping down to 3rd gear, 3 gears down, running it through turn 5, up towards turns 6 and 7, not using as much of the track, trying to not scrub the tires as much, keep the tires preserved as much as possible, in through turn 6, out wide to turn out of 7 into 8 so that he can get the best run through that hairpin into turn 9. Again, using that exit curve, trying to flow the car through this section, take advantage of this nimble GTE car compared to the big heavy GT1 cars that Dan Bartusch is in behind. Out wide again, just letting the car open up, not staying hard on the steering, running back towards the start again. Very, very quick laps around Interlagos. The cars look very, very planted around here. And that is a lap pretty much of Interlagos with the guy at the front, Don Pittman, back into turns 1 and 2. So it looks like Steve and Tim at it yet again. Steve up the inside of Tim this time as they start to have their little squabble again. Steve obviously wanting to get up into that P4 position. Yeah, exactly. Harry needs to head down. It's a long race. It's 3 hours. It's unfortunate that he's had the incidents so early, but I definitely could see. It looks like he might have just pulled the pin, though, unfortunately. Been in the pit lane for a very, very long time. He is now 5 laps down. It's a long race, but sometimes it's just not your day, and you just have to park it because too many issues with the car, or you're having other issues, and you just decide it's better off to not force yourself to continue the run. Steve now dropped back a little bit from Tim, not as close anymore. Still not a whole lot of fighting going on track at the moment. The race seems to have settled down. Tim and Steve, as well as Kyra and Liam, seem to be the closest battles on track, although Brady now drawing a little bit closer to the back of Liam, as we've now got the lapped car of Cooper Cottrell in the way after that unfortunate pit lane penalty on lap 13. So it is just the pit stop bop is what I'm hearing from race control of those penalties as they enter the pit lane. So that makes a lot more sense. It looks like Liam enters the pit lane here. It's a long time sitting in that pit lane, it seems. Spend a long time sitting in there. Cooper is just going to hang on to the back of Brady at the moment as we start to get into this pit cycle and start to see different strategies coming out as we enter into the next little stage of this race. It's going to be a long day for a lot of these drivers trying to recover. Liam's probably going to get as much damage repaired on that car as he possibly can, get back out there and make as much time back as possible with less damage on the back of that car, because it was very, very worse for wear there. Steve gets up the inside of Tim. Tim running a little bit wide there into turn 10, and it just allows Steve to get up the inside, make the move up into P4 as we start our way towards the 18th lap of this race. It's a lot of laps still left to run if they've only got 18 laps in half an hour-ish. So we'll have to see what happens. Matthew Young now jumps Liam as he's still sitting in that pit lane. Looks like Liam is now on his out lap has about 8 seconds ahead of Cooper here, so he's got a lot of time between him and the next car. As Tim is now trying to find his way back past Steve for that P4. He really, really wants that P4 here. And it looks like Jeremy's slowly bringing that time down on Dan. It's now back down to 2 seconds from the 4 seconds it was at earlier. So hopefully they can bring that back and they can have another little go at running for P2 and 3 on track. It looks like Don is just walking away with this one. 5 seconds to the better of Dan Bartosz. And it seems that he's the untouchable one at the moment. Don seems to just be the one running out the front, running his own race, running to his rhythm, putting in the laps, and just slowly building that gap up over the other competitors. As it looks like Steve's managed to just get a little bit of a gap here over Tim. So this is looking good between these two drivers. As we see Liam in the background, the car probably looking a lot better than it was when he first entered that pit lane. So we will jump back and have a little look at that car. Yes, that rear panel is looking a lot better. The car is a lot happier now after that initial incident much earlier in the race. So Liam now on the recovery drive with a car that isn't as damaged, hopefully trying to make up that time by pitting early compared to his other competitors, and hopefully he can make his way back up towards the podium. As Tim now still all over the back of Steve. These two have been locked together since they first got together on track. They've been sort of locked in this battle and haven't really separated more than a second. So this is a nice little battle pack going on that's probably going to be around for most of the race. There isn't a different bop for pit lane stop time, so no one will gain an advantage on the pit lane stop. Steve now just gets a little bit of a breathing room again on Tim coming into this front straight. It seems that Tim's not as strong through that last sector as Steve is. And it seems that Steve is just able to pull that half a second, there's 0.3 back out just before they get to this straight where the BMW, the big sniffer, comes charging back towards the back of this Corvette and chasing it down once again. BMW very, very quick in a straight compared to that Corvette GTE. Again, we get to this next straight. Tim looking up the inside again. He's making the move this time. No, he backs out of it. Not far enough alongside, pulls out, thinks better of it, doesn't want to get into an accident. It's unnecessary this early on in the race. We've just broken the first half hour of the race, and it's still a very, very competitive race between these two drivers right here. They still fight their way through this tight section. Steve just had a little bit better through the tight, twisty stuff than Tim, and it's just keeping him in front for now. But Tim again looks up at turn 11, almost making contact with the back of Steve's car. We will jump down to the nose and follow a lap around the track from Tim Sullivan as we look at the back of this Corvette, as we see the half a second gap that opens up as we exit that corner, and then just the absolute speed coming down this front straight of the BMW sitting in the slipstream of the Corvette is able to pull in those 0.2 of a second and again be on the back of Steve as Tim looks up the inside once again, showing his nose, trying to fill those mirrors, trying to put Steve under pressure, make him make a mistake. Coming down through turn 3. Yeah, you can just see the difference in straight line speed between the Corvette and the BMW as again Tim goes looking. He's up the inside this time, he doesn't back out. Up the inside. Tim gets through, sitting from the driver's eye view, he goes defensive into turn 6 and 7. Tim finally makes his way through. on Steve once again, and these two still just locked in this battle. Their fighting, though, has brought Liam back towards them. He is technically a lap down, but he has pitted and they haven't. So he is on an alternate strategy. Liam having pit early. He pit on lap 17 compared to these ones that are still running 20 on lap 22. So there's a big, big difference coming through here. As Liam chasing these two down, hoping not to lose too much time getting around them, even though he is a lap down at this point of the race. This is where we will see strategy coming into it. Is Liam's early strategy going to cost him at the end? Is he going to go a lap down at the wrong time and get stuck further back in the pack? Or is he able to use this early strategy, get himself that little bit of clean air so that when the others start to pit, he can start making advantages on that? As we still look at these two running really, really close, still fighting, as now Steve in the draft is able to not drop off the back of this BMW. The draft very, very powerful for these cars. Liam just sitting in the background, trying not to get involved. He is technically a lap down, but he does want to make as much ground as possible and get through these cars. Does look up the inside of Steve through this corner. He is going to put himself between them and separate these two cars. So Liam getting in between this fight, but he is trying to make up that time after pitting and trying to take advantage of his early pit stop and make as much ground as possible on his competitors that haven't yet made their pit stop. As it looks like Cooper has had a meatball coming off the track. Oh yes, he has come off the track in a big way somewhere. What has he done? Oh yes, that is a very, very unfortunate accident for Cooper. Just a little spin coming out of turn 10, going towards turn 11, and it is enough to just upset the car. And he does now have a meatball flag. So Cooper again. Oh, and don't know where he's got the front damage from. That I've been unable to find where he got that front damage to give him the meatball, but it is very, very unfortunate. Oh, that's not good for Cooper. He's very, very much broken the steering of that car. We jump back. Liam is now in front of this fight. Steve and Tim get to resume their battle once again. Liam now trying to get that clean air to try and make that gap back onto Kyra and Brady that have yet to pit. We're on lap 24, and those two still yet to pit compared to Liam, who has pit. So we'll have to see how all of this strategy plays out. It looks like Jeremy is starting to close back up onto the back of Dan. So this battle is restarting again very, very soon. We've got Dan just running his own race, but Jeremy trying to close that gap back down, trying to catch back up to the race lead. See Don just in the distance. He's the untouchable one right now. Should a safety car come out, that might change, but at the moment, very, very much in the way of Don Pittman. He's had the clean bill. He hasn't got himself involved in any accidents. He's driven smart. He's got around the accidents, got himself to the front, and now with these warmer tires, he's able to just make advantage of that gap that he seemed to be struggling with on the first few laps. He just didn't have the same pace as these GT1 cars that seemed to be able to just aggressively attack the track from the get-go, where the two GTE cars weren't able to be as aggressive without the risk of coming off the track. Again, Tim and Steve locked in a battle. They're 3/10 apart once again, coming towards this tight section. They're back at turn 8, still locked together. Liam seems to have just driven away just a little bit. He's very much got the pace now that his car isn't as damaged as it was before. That repair that he managed to get in the pit lane has given him a clean bill to just absolutely attack this track once more and in clean air, so he's able to set very, very quick lap times compared to other people around him that are stuck in fights, unable to take advantage of their car not having the damage. So again, strategy is going to be the big deciding thing come the end of this race, especially for drivers like Liam, who have had those accidents early on, put themselves in a bad position within the first hour and are now on the recovery. See Jeremy just about to close in on that last second to catch up to Dan and put themselves back into yet another fight. Jump back just a little bit in the pack and have a little look at PJ Whiteman, still running around, going as strong as he can with the Kodak Porsche RSR. This is a beautiful looking car. Those red rims are a very nice touch. It's looking very nice. Oh, very wide on exit, getting a little bit unsettled as he goes towards the start-finish line. To start lap 26 for him. These cars able to go almost an hour on their tank. They've got 3 compulsory pit stops. So Liam might have put himself in a bad spot. He might have to do an extra pit stop compared to the others. It all depends on how long they can stretch these tanks out compared to him, or whether there is just enough that it is going to be a 4th pit stop needed for fuel to make it to the end. How well people can save their fuel over these 3 compulsory pit stops. Have another little look at Kyra running down the front straight. She is now chasing down Steve and Tim. So this will be bringing them back to the fight for 4th position. And again, if they can get to 4th and just get a safety car, they can be back into this fight for the podium. This car is very quick. A lot of time brought back down. They're gaining time in on the lead. So it definitely comes down to, if we get a safety car for a car having an accident down here on this straight or the front straight, could be the game changer for a lot of these drivers being able to make back time. Kyra definitely drawing that time down, just taking tenths of a second after tenth of a second through each sector. Slowly but surely catching to the back of Steve's cars. Those two stay locked in battle. Steve and Tim perpetually locked in battle this race. They have not been able to separate at all. Kyra having a bad last sector, losing a little bit of time coming to this front straight onto the back of Steve and Tim. So just a little mistake, costing a lot of time around here. It's not a long lap, only about a minute and a half. So a little mistake does cost a lot of time. Go back to Jeremy, who is now within a second of Dan Bartush coming into this section. He is now drawing closer and closer to the back of P2, slowly but surely making his way to the second step of the podium. Again, you can just see that it just looks a lot better for Jeremy through there, as we have had an accident. It looks like Tim Sullivan has had an accident in the background. He's lost time. He's dropping down the order. He's towing back to the pit lane. So what's happening? Oh, it looks like he's just had what's happened there? Has he had an issue? Has he had something come up? That's a very weird one. He's just pulled over. I'm not sure what just happened there, but that's very interesting. Tim Sullivan just pulling over and towing back to the pit lane. We jump back live with Jeremy chasing down Dan again for the second step of the podium. Now Steve not having to he locked in that fight with Tim, he might be able to make some time on these two. If they start fighting, he might be able to draw in. He's 20 seconds back, but anything can happen. There is still 2 hours, 15 minutes to go of this race. There's a long, long way to go. Not over anytime soon. So far, we've only had one DNF. We've had 2 DNFs. We've had Harry and potentially Cooper pull the pin, and maybe even a third with Tim Sullivan. We're now down to potentially only 9 cars running on track. Oh, it was Dan, goes around right in front of Jeremy. That's very unfortunate. Dan was running very, very strong in second. It would have been a nice little fight here, but he has made a mistake coming into turn 10. Looks like he locked the brakes or missed the blip on the downshift and grabbed at the rear brakes and turned himself around. Very, very unfortunate for Dan, but it has allowed Jeremy to go to second place uncontested, and he can now work on chasing down the leader of Don Pittman. So we'll have to see if Jeremy can't catch up to the cars at the front. The car at the front of Don Pittman, as he now gets past a back marker there of PJ Whiteman. Have to see if Dan can keep that P3 now, as he is now less than 20 seconds from Steve. Liam drawing in Matthew Young further down the field as well. He's now within 5 seconds of the back of Matthew Young. So this is very, very good. A good recovery from Liam after his early incident. Kyra just sort of driving to get to the next pit stop, I think, and trying to drive to a number instead of overdriving, pushing too aggressively, especially after being out of sync with an accident early on in the race. Potentially just trying to make it to the pits so they can get the first compulsory pit stop out of the way, because there is still a lot of drivers out here that haven't taken their first compulsory pit stop with 2 hours, 15 minutes to go. They do have to make 3, so this will be very, very interesting to see when cars start to come to the pit lane to take their compulsory pit stop. Tim Sullivan now on his way out, so we are still at 10 cars running. Now pulled out as Liam's had another moment coming on to the front straight here. Looks like he's done it all by himself too, just maybe too aggressive on corner exit. Yes, way too aggressive on corner exit. Too much curb, too much throttle. Spun himself round, coming onto the front straight. And he's now lost so much of that time that he got from running in clean air compared to a lot of these other cars. So he's now got a lot of work to do. We've had another accident, it looks like, for Dan Bartush as well, as he's come off the track. Has he done that? He's done it in a turn 4. Has he just done the same thing? Yeah, he's just locked the brakes once again. Well into the sand trap. He's gone a long way into that braking zone on those brakes. He was unable to unlock the brakes and just kept sailing into that corner. So we now look at Kyra once again, just driving potentially to the number, trying to get to the pit stops. Shouldn't be long, and we should be seeing a lot more cars taking their first compulsory pit stop of the event. Especially should hopefully be seeing Dan Bartush in soon with those lockups. He's definitely done some damage to those tires, and I feel like he would be feeling the tire wear after that. Locking up those tires, there's a lot to them. Heats them up very, very aggressively, and could be a big issue. So now got Liam all over the back of Kyra. Again, this is not a battle for position at the moment, but Kyra is still yet to pit, so this could very well be a positional battle after the pit cycle, once everything settles back into position. That Porsche is very, very quick in a straight line. These GT1 cars not able to just simply drive by easily until the very end of the straight, as Kyra now sends it back up the inside. These two in a nice little battle, even though they are not on the same lap currently. This is a nice little battle, keeping us entertained as we sort of settle into our little rhythm here. We're just waiting for the pit cycles, waiting for the strategies to see where these cars end up come the end of the pit cycle. It should be pretty close for a lot of these cars. Potentially, by the time Brady comes back out, he should be in battle with Liam once more. Potentially, even Kyra pitting back into a positional battle with Liam. Top 7 yet to pit. Top 8 yet to pit. Matthew Young having started from the pit lane by the looks of it. So that means that Liam is your current leader of cars that have pitted on lap 17. So we'll have to see. Getting very close to that, breaking the first hour of the race right now. And still a lot of cars yet to take their first compulsory pit stop. They're running 33 laps in. Are these drivers going to run their tank empty and then have to just take their time at the end, even though they had a short fuel to the end because of the compulsory pit stop time? Which could be to Liam's advantage. If he has to pit that extra time, he could just splash and then drive away while they're still trying to fill up their cars with fuel and make even more time on them there. But we'll have to wait and see how that plays out for him come the end of this race in another 2 hours. See where these fuel loads take them within their stints, because this is definitely a lot that they've got to take into consideration here. It's like Liam just following Kyra for now, but could potentially try and make another move going down into turn 1. Liam running it out wide again, very close to going around when he's lifting that front inside wheel up off the ground on the exit of that corner. I see GT1 speed in a straight line, but it looks like he is going to send a move again on Kyra into turn 1. Kyra able to be later on the brakes and hanging around the outside. Liam very close to the back of that car through that section. He's looking very, very aggressive here as he runs out wide onto the curb. Kyra covering him off. Ooh, a little bit of damage, a little bit of nudging. Liam might have got into the back of that car just a little bit there. Liam sends it up the inside, has to brake a little bit harder not to drive into the side of Kyra, and they are able to just hang around the outside. This is a good little battle once again, but it is slowing Kyra down from the back of Steve potentially. So this is not good for their race in the long term, but it is a good little battle between these two cars. For potential position once Kyra makes it to the pit lane, because it looks like they will have to take more fuel than Liam, so Liam might make a little bit of time there as he has taken a lot less fuel. Race leader is in. Don Pittman has finally entered the pit lane, so we've got our first of the lead pack taking their pit stop. Kyra with a very big wobble going into turn 12 there. That car looking very, very upset at the moment. Very, very wobbly. A lot of loose rear end. Does have a slowdown now as they did go so far out. Dan Bartush also in the pit lane, so that is P1 and P3 in the pit lane. Kyra now entering the pit lane as well. It's looking like 35, 36 laps are the stint lengths that we will be getting here. So it should be very, very close to a splash and dash at the end for everybody. Everybody potentially going to have to make 4 pit stops. Now jump back to Liam to see where he comes out in all of this, because he's now no longer going to be a lap down after all of this. Lovely. So he's going to be coming up on these cars that have yet to pit, as that are pitting now. Still have Jeremy Greentree and Brady Buchanan running out on track. They should be coming in very soon, with the other cars having entered the pit lane. Also, and that should be the field cleansed on pits, as PJ Whitman has pit as well on lap 33. So Liam still 15 seconds back. He's lost a lot of time to a lot of these cars. Sorry, no, PJ Whiteman has yet to pit, sorry. He's still yet to pit, he's still out there on green flag. Liam now, within 7 seconds of Steve McDonald. How many cars does Liam pass with this? He goes past almost all of them. He's up past Dan Bartush, so that puts him back in effective P3 at this moment in time. But again, Liam had a much shorter stop at the start of the race. He has pit a lot earlier than a lot of these other drivers. So now it comes down to, can Liam catch back up to the lead of Don Pittman, who is about 30 seconds ahead of him. So he's a long way ahead. He has a big gap to catch up. It's a lot of work. But it does show that this strategy from Liam might pay off, but he might also have a bill to pay come the end of the race when he has to take extra fuel to everybody else in that third and final compulsory pit stop. Where they might be able to splash to get to the end, he'll probably have to take a lot more fuel. So it will work out in the short run, but will this early pit strategy work out in the long run? Don Pittman goes back to the lead. Jeremy Greentree, Brady Buchanan, PJ Whiteman all come into the pit lane. Matthew Young's still yet to pit. He's now in P2, but he has had to come in for a penalty early on in the race. Liam coming through here now. 13 seconds back of Jeremy. So a lot of time to make up, but is very much possible. It's about 23 seconds back from the lead of this race, so not as far back as he could have been, even after 2 accidents and taking an early pit stop. So strategy so far working in Liam's favor. Getting himself back up to P3 on the road, 4 seconds ahead of Dan Bartush. But Liam will also have fresher and warmer tires than the 2 leaders, so this is his chance to make up a lot of that ground back. Matthew Young has a little bit of a moment potentially going into turn 12. Turn 10, sorry, yeah, he just does the same thing as all the others have done, just a little bit too much brake potentially on turn in, just rotating the back around and having that tiny little spin. Liam's now within 3 seconds of Matthew Young for P3 on the road, but again, Matt's still yet to pit properly. He's only had the pit lane start and potentially a penalty as Matthew Young comes into the pit lane and Liam goes through to P3 on the road, 10 seconds behind Jeremy Greentree. He's now 5 seconds ahead of Dan Bartush as well, so Liam's older but warmer tyres giving him a pretty good advantage coming through here so far. A lot of shuffling going on with these pit stops. Kyra now only 2 seconds back off the back of Steve McDonald as well, so that gap has closed down just a little bit for P5. So all of Liam's battling has helped him just that little bit when it comes to the pit strategy for now. So we'll have to see, because he's 19 laps into this stint, so he will only be another about 17 laps, and he'll potentially be back into the pit lane to take his second compulsory pit stop of the race. As we are 2 minutes away from the first hour mark of this one. Whew. 2 minutes from the first hour of this race as we jump back to Kyra chasing down Steve McDonald once again. Kyra now within 2 seconds of the back of Steve McDonald. Once again, closing in very, very quickly. Doing whatever they can. Trying to gain that. If they can get back to P5, it'll be pretty close to where they qualified for this one. So again, all of this coming back around. Even though they had those accidents early, it is a long race, and consistency can get you a long, long way in these races. Now only 1.5 seconds, 1.6 seconds between Steve and Kyra. The gap between Jeremy now within 10 seconds from Haycock. So those two closing in just a little bit. Dan Bartush also now 6 seconds back off the back of Liam, but it looks like those other cars have started to get that tire pressure back up. They're starting to get a little bit of time compared to Liam. We've had Tim Sullivan's now had another accident. He is on the tow rope. What's happened here? He's locked up. Ooh. I think that was either his throttle got stuck or he's had a little bit more of a technical issue. He's ended up in the fence and had to tow back to the pit lane. That is very, very unfortunate for Tim. And it's his second tow back to the pit lane this race. Looks like Kyra all over the back of Steve now within a second. Now looking for a positional change. Looking to try and get past Steve as they were chasing them down after that earlier incident. And they're finally caught to the back of Steve. Coming now as we've just broken through the first hour of this race. Still another 2 hours to go. This is still a long way from being over, but there's still a lot to shake out as well. Pitch strategies. A lot of people on the same strategy. Liam, the only one on the alternate strategy to everybody else with that very early pit stop. So there's a lot of things to shake out within these next couple of hours. Kyra now all over the back of Steve. They looked at a move at turn 1. It's like, oh, Matthew Young, another accident at turn 1. It's just going from bad to worse for Matthew Young in this one. Very, very unfortunate. Race as Kyra still half a second back off the back of Steve. Trying to get closer and closer. Make that move. It's Liam slowly starting to drop back off the back of Jeremy, back into the clutches of Dan Bartush. So this early strategy is now costing Liam 5 laps into this stint for Dan Bartush. He's able to start putting a little bit more lap time in. He's got those fresher, younger tires. He's got a little bit more grip than what Liam has. So Liam struggling now to keep up that pace, but he is still running P3 on the road for now. It's only about 10 laps away from potentially having to come back into the pit lane as he's very, very much on an alternate strategy. But then any pits after this, he won't have to take that 30-second compulsory pit stop by the sound of it. Kyra dropping off a little bit in that last sector again. That seems to be the sector that this car struggles with the most is that last sort of medium speed section coming onto the front straight is where Kyra loses a lot of time, but gains a lot down that front straight. About 0.4 of a second difference coming into turn 1. There's a big difference coming down towards turn 1. Kyra now a little bit closer this lap than they were last time, coming in towards turn 4. Only 0.2 off the back of Steve here. As Kyra ducks to the inside, makes the move going into turn 4. Very nicely done, but runs it wide, so let's Steve back up the inside. Steve making their way back through past on Kyra. It's a very unfortunate accident, a little bit too deep, making that move, running it that little bit wide, letting Steve back through and just losing that little bit of progress they did have. Dan has now dropped back about another second off the back of Liam, so he's had a little mistake. Maybe another tire lock. He has been struggling with locking the tires, it seems, in this race, so definitely going to be hurting Dan in the long run if he keeps locking those tires, giving them that little bit extra heat that they don't need, losing that little bit extra grip, scrubbing them that little bit more, all just adding up to take away that little bit of time that Dan does have over Liam with the fresher tires. Liam is still dropping back off the back of Jeremy, as Jeremy able to drive a lot smoother on those fresher tires and try and make his way back to the back of Don Pittman, but Don just 13 seconds up the road. He has absolutely blown away with this one. Kyra back up the inside now, through on Steve, doesn't run it wide or deep into turn 1, gets it through turn 2 to the apex, and now drives on through turn 3 onto the backs, onto this long straight, able to catch up, able to break just that half a second gap onto the back of Steve, as he's just hanging in there now. He's just going to have to follow Kyra, try and take advantage of being in that slipstream, try and catch as much as possible. Kyra now is already a second ahead of Steve, so a lot of pace in this Porsche from Kyra. Able to take advantage of it up to P5, down 2 positions from their qualifying, but they're back inside the top 5, so it's a very good recovery after being backwards at turn 1 on lap 1, all the way at the back of the field. Liam is now up 1 position. Tim looks like he might have pulled the pin as well. We are now down to 9 cars still running in this one. This is the closest on track, and yeah, it looks like Liam's still dropping back. Oh, Kyra with another big wiggle coming out of turn 12. Seems to be struggling with that turn 11 to 12 section just a little bit. That's why they're losing a lot of time compared to their other competitors. Still able to pull a little bit further ahead down that front straight over Steve. Potentially get a little bit further away from danger and keep this P5 consolidated. Steve running a little bit wide there with the exit of turn 4 into turn 5. It's giving Kyra that little bit extra breathing room. So now Kyra gonna have to chase down 11 seconds onto the back of Dan Bartush, who is still driving very strong in P4, trying to chase down Liam Haycock in P3, get back that podium position, take as much as he can towards getting that podium. Again, Liam on older tires, still doing very well, all things considered, with those older tires on that car. As we go and jump on board with Jeremy Greentree coming into turn 4. Very wide out on the exit of turn 4 again, using as much road as possible, trying to take everything they can. They are now only 12 seconds behind Don, so they are slowly drawing in time on the back of the leader, but that could also change once they start hitting lap traffic once again. Very spread out now. Jeremy 12.6 seconds off the back of Don. So this is very much coming down to a pit strategy race. See if Jeremy can try something different, try and alternate the strategy away from what Don's doing, try and make some time back, potentially getting fresh air, potentially getting newer tires earlier and making as much inroads as they possibly can while Don still stays out on the older tires. Try and do what Liam's doing further back with his alternate strategy. So Liam still about 6 to 7 seconds ahead of Dan. Those two keeping very status quo. As big slide from Jeremy going into turn 3. That's not what he needed. He was slowly closing in on the back of Don, and now he's just lost almost 3 seconds off the back of Don. So he's just lost a lot of time, and a lot of that work that he was putting in after the pits is thrown a little bit further back and just a little bit further out of touch from Don's perspective. So it's definitely going to be an interesting race here come the end, but it looks like the top two looking pretty secure in this one, with Don and Jeremy just so far ahead of everybody else at the moment. Just slowing it down a little bit now. Not as much excitement happening. Everybody's settling into their rhythm and just trying to get it through to the next pit cycle. Unfortunately, it looks like PJ Whiteman and Matthew Young just a lap down now. Not much they're able to do from that. They've had a very rough start to the start of this race, so they're just sort of hanging back, doing their own thing. They're still running P8 and 9. They're still out on track, so they're doing well. We'll jump back and have a look at Matthew Young running around in that nice yellow Corvette. It's a very, very nice looking car. As he runs it down to the front straight. So it looks like he has Brady Buchanan behind him here on track. Not for position, but at least around the track. Brady still here, chasing him down. A lot of curb usage there from Matt. He is very, very aggressive on these curves, it looks like. Using every inch of the track that he can, trying to get as much speed out of this. He is slowly bringing the time down on PJ Whiteman, so this is very much looking like the battle for 9th will be between PJ and the battle for 8th, sorry, will be PJ and Matthew Young come the end of this race. If Matthew can keep up this pace, he'll be on the back of PJ in not too long, so it'll be a very interesting battle come that point. Kyra has now managed to gain almost 3 seconds over Steve McDonald after their fight a few laps ago, so still a lot of pace in that car for Kyra, and they seem to be catching to the back of Dan Bartush slowly but surely. So if they can keep this pace up, they might be able to catch the back of Dan come towards the final end of the race and make for a very, very interesting finale here. So Liam, 29 laps into his stint, he's definitely not far from coming back into the pit lane again for his second compulsory stop of the event. Sun slowly setting, the shadows extending over the track. It's looking a lot darker than it was at the start of the race, so this is turning out to be a very nice sunset event. The off tracks are still lighting up from these guys' cars going off left and right, taking advantage of as many track limits as they possibly can. Matthew now 4 seconds off the back of PJ Whiteman. Just closing that gap very slowly but surely. Now within 4 seconds. It's like PJ just struggling in that Porsche at the moment compared to Matthew in this Corvette. Kyra about to break under 11 seconds on the back of Dan Bartush, who is slowly dropping off the back of Liam. Liam now gained another 2 seconds on the back of Jeremy. He's back within 9 seconds of Jeremy, so that he's brought it back in, even though he's very close to coming back into the pit lane. This will also mean that Liam has fresher tires once again, trying to take advantage, trying to gain that gap back. Once he has pit, take advantage of it, make as much time as possible while the others are driving around on their older, not as fresh tires. So this is definitely working out well for Liam at the moment. He has had a good recovery by taking the early pit stop, but again, a lot to take into consideration come the end of the race. He will have a bill to pay come the final stop, as he did take a lot shorter fuel stop at the start, so he didn't go as deep as the others, which means that he's got a lot more fuel needed to get to the end of this race compared to all of the other drivers here. Still pretty quiet here. Not a whole lot going on just yet. As jump back to Brady, just that little bit further back. He's still slowly drawing in Matthew Young, who is now within 2 seconds of PJ Whiteman. So this is getting a lot closer. It looks like Matthew going to be on the back of PJ by the end of next lap. As PJ runs it wide there. Oh, almost spins. Coming out of turn 12, loses a whole chunk of time, and it's now Matthew all over the back of PJ. Coming down this front straight. Matthew around the outside. Has the run because he's got that better exit. Does get the run around the outside. Does manage to make the move around the outside from PJ Whiteman. So Matthew Young up into P8. And now having to chase down back of Brady Buchanan, but he's just so far back. He's Brady only being behind him on track makes it so much harder. There is the gap. There's Brady is ahead of Matt by almost a full lap, so it's a lot of work for Matt to have to catch back up to the back of Brady, but it is very much possible that Matt can catch Brady in this situation. He has pit a lap later than Brady, so he is a little bit fresher on his tires, a little bit less fuel come to the end of this race. It's not much, but it could be the difference if Matt can extend this gap, bring this back down close enough that the pit cycle could be a deciding factor. So it all comes down to how he attacks this. We go back to the front with Don Pittman, just all on his own, driving very, very clean, doing what he has to do to get it through to the next pit stop, minimizing the mistakes he has, trying not to overdrive the car, it seems, is the big thing that I think Don is doing. Compared to the others, he's just able to keep it going quicker and able to just minimize those lockups that I think is what is keeping Jeremy. He's locking up, making those little slides. Dan Bartush again has another spin all by himself in deep into turns 6 and 7 and just slides the car around and drops that time down. So now Kyra within 10 seconds off the back of Dan Bartush. So again, Dan just having those little mistakes, those little 1%ers that are, I think, is what has got Liam in front of him for P3 on track at the moment. It's definitely made a difference as Kyra runs out wide. Still 6 seconds back from Dan Bartush, 6.3 Dan now 14 seconds off the back of Liam, so it's looking pretty solid for your top 3 at the moment. And Kyra trying to get that 4th position, so hopefully Kyra can draw that down. They're now within 6 seconds of Dan Bartush, so slowly but surely bringing that time down. Not enough to catch the leaders, but definitely got a lot of time in it and potentially could be a podium here if they can carry that speed to catch Liam as well. Now 5.5 seconds between Kyra and Dan. 5 seconds back to Steve McDonald behind. And then Brady Buchanan in P7, another 20 seconds back from Steve, which is almost another lap back to Matthew Young's. So very much a long-term endurance here. We're now an hour 20 into this race, still an hour 40 to go. Still a long way for this race. Kyra now almost within 5 seconds, so a lot faster in this Porsche than Dan is in that Corvette. But we get to the section where it seems like Kyra is struggling the most. Through turns 10 to 12 seems to be where Kyra struggles the most. Runs off track, loses a little bit more time, now back to 5.5 seconds. So losing a little bit of time on the exit to this front straight. See Dan just disappear off the camera as we follow Kyra into turn 1. Liam's still about 9 seconds off the back of Jeremy. He's now 34 laps into his stint, so I dare say Liam won't be far from coming into the pit lane once more. He's at that window that everybody else was in, 34 to 36. So it seems like he should be in the pit lane again, which will effectively put Dan back into P3 on the road. Kyra P4, so they will be chasing down P3 on track. Hopefully with the right speed, they'll be able to draw in Liam as well and potentially get P3 outright on track after the pit cycles are done once more. And now within 5 seconds for Kyra, so slowly but surely catching the back of Dan Bartush. Here we go, Liam into the pit lane once again. So this is stop number 2 for Liam. As he comes in to get his fuel, get new tires potentially. There goes Dan. Through goes Dan, and then Kyra, who's now within 4.5 seconds off the back of Dan. Slowly but surely drawing in a few tenths here and there, bringing that gap back down. Extending that back out to 4.5 seconds, but bringing it back down in this these mid-speed corners seem to be where Kyra is much stronger than Dan. Gaining a lot of time, hand over fist through those sections, where the GTE car seems to just be a little bit more planted, a little bit stronger through that section compared to the big, bulky GT1. Like Matthew Young has had yet another accident. Oh, coming up to turn 10. Goes off the track. Oh, gets the wall. Thankfully not too much damage, doesn't break the steering or anything, but that is very, very unfortunate. Coming up towards turn 10, getting that wall. So loses that position back on PJ Whiteman and has to get back past them once again. Kyra now within 3 seconds of Dan Bartush. Closing in very, very quickly. Liam's back out on track in P7. He's P7 on the road, but definitely effective P1 after pit stops at this point if he can't make advantage of these fresher tires now. He is about just over half a lap back from the back of Brady Buchanan. So it's definitely going to be very, very close here. Definitely these last couple of corners that are keeping Kyra from gaining that time hand over fist from Dan Bartush. They just can't seem to get that last corner as well as Dan can. And then they get to this straight and Kyra seems to just have that little bit more top end. Seems to be a very low downforce set on this Porsche. A lot of straight line speed coming out of this car. Even though it looks very, very planted through the corners, but it explains a lot of the wobbling too. Brady Buchanan runs off the track again as well, dropping that time just a little bit to Liam. Still a long way back though, 50 seconds back. Matthew Young now back past PJ Whiteman. Coming into turn 1. To stay with Kyra here. Slowly but surely drawing in Dan Bartush. Getting closer and closer lap by lap. Won't be much longer and Kyra will be on the back of this Corvette and we'll be racing for the effective P3 after pit stops. Sorry, the effective P4 after pit stops. Just about at the halfway point of this race, 4 minutes till halfway. Running order, Don Pittman, Jeremy Greentree, Dan Bartush, Kyra Krasenberg, Steve McDonald, Brady Buchanan, Liam Haycock, Matthew Youngs, and the final running driver of PJ Whiteman. So, Don Pittman just looking untouchable at the front, 16 seconds clear of Jeremy Greentree. Has another 25 seconds back to Dan Bartush and Kyra Krasenberg. Kyra now within 2 seconds, almost in the slipstream of Dan Bartush coming down this front straight. This is effectively P4 on the road that they are fighting for after the pit stops. Liam is P3 at this point in time after pit cycles. I have to just wait and see where he shakes out after these guys pit, as he pit very much off strategy. As he's now 2 laps he's 3 laps into his stint compared to the 21, 22 laps of everybody else in this pack. So he has a lot of ground to make up. He has about 19 laps difference to most of the cars in the field on his pit strategy. That is a big, big invoice to pay come the end of the race. 19 laps of fuel is a lot of fuel. Kyra now 1.2 seconds back off Dan. We're about to get another little battle going here. Kyra runs it a little wide. Coming into turns 4 and 5. Turn 6 and 7. Kyra now within a second. This is getting much, much closer. Potentially a fight for P4, depending on how Dan handles this. He could just let Kyra go and drive to his number. Drive to make it to the end. That'll be the big thing. Is Dan driving to a number, or is he pushing? He is very wide into turn 10, now through 11. Half a second between them. This is close up very, very quickly. Kyra very deep into turn 12. Out wide on the exit. But gets a run on Dan. Dan keeps it narrow. He's in front for now. Kyra not letting go. Now sitting in the slipstream. 0.2 of a second between them. Dan coming into the pit lane. Changing up his strategy. He's trying something different. So he's now closer to Liam's strategy than anybody else's. So at the halfway point, Dan comes back in. Gives himself one final pit stop to get to the end. And I think with one more compulsory pit stop, Dan will be able to make it to the end of this race. Based on the numbers we've been seeing, they've been going almost an hour on a fuel tank. So if he can just make it that last little bit, he'll only have to pit for enough fuel for about 30, 40 minutes compared to other people who will have to pit for a full hour, almost full hour's worth of running and a little bit extra. So this could be a very, very good call for Dan. He's probably done the numbers, but it does mean that he, like Liam, is very much off strategy. He might be a little bit better though. He might be more on strategy than Liam. It's alternate, but it might be what he needed. So we're going to jump to Liam on the gyro as he catches towards Dan in the pit lane. Has he lost the time, or has Liam gained enough time to stay in front of Dan Bartush by a nice big margin after the pits? Liam goes through, now 3 seconds in front of Dan, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6. Yeah, so it looks like Liam has taken full advantage. He is now 8 seconds ahead of Dan, where before the pit lane he was only about 6 seconds in front. So Liam made a massive, massive gain over Dan in this pit strategy. Now, Dan coming out into P7 and potentially on the strategy that could get him pole vaulted towards the front of this race after the next pit stop, where he pits to get to the end of the race. We stay on board with Liam coming through turn 9 up to turn 10, round turn 10. Probably the slowest corner on the track. In through turn 11, a big lift through turn 11. Down through turn 12, rolling through turn 12, leaning on those tires. You can hear them squealing as Liam exits the corner. We get back to the TV cameras. Matthew Young has yet another accident. Now this time through turn 2, too much of that grass at the wrong time, and it does send him into the wall. Did much damage. He does bend up at the front a little bit, but it doesn't seem like it's put him with any wheel damage, so he should be able to get it through without having to worry about needing to do a pit stop for a meatball flag. So that is very, very good. Liam now 10 seconds ahead of Dan Bartush, so he's made a massive amount of time on his pit strategy. So this is really, really good for Liam. He's gaining a lot of time here over other cars around him, such as Kyra. He should be able to keep that gap to Kyra pretty good. Kyra now is actually clawing time a little bit out of Jeremy, but now losing it just a little bit again. So it's ebbing and flowing between Kyra and Jeremy at the moment. As we get into the status quo of this race. Now Brady Buchanan with an accident. not what he needed, because he had a good gap over some of the other people he was running with. He just goes in deep, just has a bit of a spin, no damage, just a little bit of tire scrubbing. So not the worst accident he could have had there, but definitely not what he needed when he was trying to keep a gap over some of the other people and gain that time back on Steve McDonald. So very, very unfortunate for Brady there. Go back to Liam. Going down this straight between 3 and 4. Now 11 seconds ahead of Dan Bartush. So definitely taking advantage of his newer tires compared to Dan. He's got 5 laps difference over the other car. So his tires may not be newer, but they've definitely got more tire temperature in them than what Dan does at this point in time. Liam able to push just that little bit harder, take a little bit more of the curb, be a little bit more aggressive with his driving. Jeremy now dropping further back from Don Pittman. It's looking like it is Don Pittman's race to lose here at this point in time. Jeremy into the pit lane. So he's changing his strategy up. He's now only done 26 laps compared to his 34 of the first stint. So he's got about an 8 lap difference in his pit strategy. So we'll have to see how this plays out. As it now elevates Kyra up into P2 for now. Sticking to that long-term strategy is Kyra and Don. As we have a driver change from the HTS Racing Red as Jeremy jumps out and Pete Edwards jumps into that car. I think that's the only team with 2 drivers in it, so it's definitely going to have to see how Pete goes, as Jeremy's had a lot of pace in that car, and hopefully Pete can keep that pace up or even be quicker and catch back up to Don Pittman. Liam coming closer and closer to these two. Brady Buchanan now going past. He's now into P4 on track. Still yet to pit for his second pit stop. So second pit running through at the moment. All the strategies are starting to shift now. A lot of people on different strategies to everyone else. This is definitely going to have to see how it shakes out come the end of this race. See Liam now still 16 seconds back, so Jeremy able to have pulled a fairly decent gap over Liam during that stint. He goes from 8 seconds to about 14 seconds in that stint after Liam's pit stop. But Pete has to get the tire temperature up. Liam still has a tire temp, so he could take advantage of that, gain a lot of that time back in these first 2 laps. As we see Liam now gains almost a second just in that one section of track, having those older tires that are warmer. Just got so much more pace. He's gained another 2 seconds almost onto the back of Pete Edwards. So these strategies definitely shaking out a lot differently. Looks like Matthew Young's had yet another accident. He is just not having a good race here. He's doing his best. He's still out on track. He should still be able to finish up with the top 10. Oh, he goes off onto the infield. Just rotates it back around and he just keeps going. So not a bad spin for Matthew Young. Still recoverable. Jump back to Liam, who is now within 11 seconds of Pete Edwards. So they do have a 9 lap difference on tires. So it's a very, very big difference on tire temp, tire wear. We'll have to see how this comes out at the end for Liam. But it's so far looking like a good strategy call on Liam's part. Even though he had the damage early on, it's looking like a good strategy call to take that very early pit stop and put himself off cycle with everybody else, because it's now forced them to change their strategy. Now other people pitting off cycle, covering Liam off. There's the front four still. Stay out on track. They don't pit for their second one just yet. As now Don Pittman has 43 seconds over Kyra Krasenberg, but Don just hasn't put anything put wrong yet this race, as he starts to catch the back of Brady Buchanan here to put a lap on to Brady. Just seems to be the untouchable one at the moment. Out the front is Don Pittman. Car's looking very fast, very planted. No issues here for the leader of the race. Slowly pulling more and more time out. Kyra now with 16 seconds over Steve McDonald. Have to see where Kyra comes out in regards to Dan Bartush, as they were in a bit of a fight pre-pit stop. So that's going to be interesting to see where that all shakes out. Kyra quite hadn't got past Dan yet, but now Kyra has clean air and was very, very quick when they had the clean air over Dan Bartush. So going to have to see where this puts speed difference. Liam on that lap, a 1:30.6 to Pete Edwards 1:31.0, so a lot of time difference in that between the two different Corvettes. So Liam still with a lot of pace in that car at the moment, trying to take advantage of it as much as he can. Now Pete Edwards with his personal best of the race, a 1:30 flat, compared to Liam with a 1:30.6. So now Pete Edwards with that tyre temp up, now pushing very, very quickly, setting new PBs. One more compulsory pit stop for Pete Edwards, Liam Haycock, and Dan Bartush. So these guys very, very quick and a very, very different strategy to our race leaders. Is now Steve McDonald in. He comes in after another 31 laps. So we're well and truly 60 laps into this race. Brady Buchanan now elevated to P3 on the road. Don Pittman also into the pit lane. So the leaders starting to come in about the same time as last time. Still an hour 18 to go, so they've still got to do a splash towards the end yet as well. But with Dan Bartush and Liam's strategy, they might be able to get more out of this, because they'll be able to pit earlier into this final stint, and they won't be running as much fuel, so their compulsory pit timer will add a lot less to their overall pit time. Liam now passes Steve while he's still in the pits. Dan passes Steve while he's in the pits. Slowly but surely, time comes down. Brady Buchanan now almost to the back of Don Pittman while he's still in the pit lane. But Brady was also very close to going a lap down, so he may not be able to jump Don while Don is still in the pits. And Brady's still yet to take his pit stop. So this could very much mean that Brady goes 2 laps down by the end of his goes a lap down by the end of his pit stop. So we'll just have to wait and see how this all pans out in terms for Brady Buchanan. Now, Pete Edwards, less than 20 seconds off the back of Don Pittman now. He has had a lot more pace. He's now within 16 seconds, so he has gained time over the potential race lead. So Pete Edwards could be running this thing to the end and chasing down for the overall win over Don Pittman. These strategies are very, very different. It's a 5-lap difference now in tyres. Pete Edwards with the tyre temp. Don with very cold tyres just coming out of the pit lane. Let's see how much Pete can take out of that. This is the time to take advantage of having those older tyres, the warmth. Liam now within 11 seconds of Pete. They're still running very, very similar times as Liam last time round was 2/10 quicker than Pete Edwards was. So they're very, very similar on their pace. So yes, lap 67 of this race. I just had to update the overlay a little bit. 67 going into lap 68. There's Kyra now in the pit lane. Sorry, we are on lap 67. Brady Buchanan now leads the race. Kyra Krasenberg in the pits. Liam passing Kyra now in the pit lane. Let's see where Kyra comes out compared to Dan Bartush. That was the big one, as they were the ones racing together on track. We have a look at Kyra. Still 6 seconds, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2. Dan coming past, making a little bit of a gap now. Going to have just a bit of a gap over the top of Kyra here. About 2 seconds. So Kyra loses a little bit of time by going longer. 10 laps difference. Dan was able to take advantage of that. He has a lot less fuel put in that car, but again, he'll have a bigger invoice at the end of the race. So while Liam may be P3 on track, he also has an even bigger invoice than Dan to pay. So this will be very, very interesting to see where this all ends up. Kyra now 4 seconds back off Dan again, but with clean air, potentially maybe able to draw that back in very, very quickly. Only an hour 15 to go in this race. Less than an hour 15 to go. We are well and truly over halfway through. And it seems to be in a pretty status quo, but Don Pittman only has 11 seconds over Pete Edwards. So this is a lot. This is still very, very quick. Pete Edwards setting a new personal best of 129.866 last time by. He was 8/10 quicker than Don Pittman on that previous lap. But now, Don's been out for a few laps, so he has tyre temp back in that car, and he might be able to start pulling that gap back out again. Kyra's still trying to get that tyre temp back up, so unable to catch Dan Bartush just yet, but still working towards it. Liam looking very comfortable in P3 for the moment as well. Brady Buchanan shouldn't be far away from pitting. He last pit lap 35, now 35 laps into this stint. Almost at 34 laps into this stint, so he should be in very, very soon. Once again, looks like Dan Bartusz again has another moment. He's now brought Kyra Krasenberg 1 second back. Have a quick look, see what happened to Dan. Again, he just gets on that... He misses something on that downshift going into that corner. It's the second time he's done that into that corner. And it spins the back of the car around. Now Kyra 1 second back within the slipstream, running down the front straight. We've seen that Kyra is very, very quick down this front straight in this Porsche compared to everything else on the track. It's a very, very quick car in a straight line, but it seems to be struggling through some of the corners because of it. Now within half a second off the back of Dan Bartusz coming down towards turn 4 here. Is Kyra going to make a move? Dan sitting a little bit defensive, saying you're going to have to probably go the long way if you want to go round. Kyra thinks better of it, stays behind for now, just follows. There is a 10 lap difference between these tyres, so Kyra has very, very fresh tyres. They've now got tyre temp. And looking very, very competitive against the back of Dan Bartusz's car. Brady Buchanan now into the pit lane and relinquishing the lead back to Don Pittman. Now has about 11 seconds still over the front of Pete Edwards. Dan Bartusz very wide on corner exit, almost into the grass on the other side. The track again getting darker and darker. Braking markers getting harder to see. Sun getting into people's eyes here as Kyra goes again very wide on the exit of turn 12, heading up towards the final sector. The final section of track down the front straight, 0.6 of a second behind Dan Bartusz, losing a little bit of time from that corner exit. Again, we see just the absolute straight line speed of Kyra's car, gains another few tenths of a second. Oh, very, very deep. That was a big dive from Kyra. I think Dan might have made a mistake there, going just a little bit deep. And it's just allowed Kyra to get through. There might have been contact too. Not sure, but we might have had contact between them because Dan's car did look to get a little upset from such a deep dive by Kyra. Nothing really that I can go and look at for that, so that's unfortunate, but we're now less than an hour 10 to go in this race. Kyra now 2 seconds ahead of Dan, but still 22 seconds back off the back of Liam Haycock. TJ Whiteman into the pit lane for his second compulsory pit stop of this race. Liam Haycock sets another personal best lap with a 1:29.654. The pace slowly dropping as the temperature seems to be dropping on the track. Sun going down. Pace seems to be dropping as well. The cars are getting quicker and quicker through this race. A lot of big gaps forming now. There's Pete Edwards still slowly but surely drawing that time in onto the back of Don Pittman. So this could be a race to the end between these cars. So it's very, very interesting. Pete Edwards very, very quick out there at the moment. Don Pittman sets a new lap. 1:29.866, new personal best for him. As Pete Edwards sets the fastest lap of the race, a 1:29.506, 0.3 of a second quicker than Don Pittman on the lap. Pete is pushing very, very hard to catch up to the back of Don Pittman. He very well could, by the end of this race, get to the front and win this thing overall. If he can keep this pace up for the next couple stints, he should be able to catch Don and take advantage of his pit strategy. So this is very, very interesting. It's a very, very quick lap. As Don Pittman has a moment, he loses 3 seconds to Pete Edwards. That's not what he needed when Don's just set the new fastest lap of the race. It's going into turn 8 and just has a little bit of a lockup going into there. A bit too quick, trying to keep that time up to stay away from Don, to stay away from Pete. So he's starting to feel the pressure as Don just setting faster and faster times. He's pushing so hard to catch to the back of Don Pittman as they come on to the front straight once again. A little bit of a time loss for Pete on that lap, other than the time where Don had the accident, but overall a little bit of a drop back come the end of the lap. Pete Edwards, that's a 1:29.86, but Don had a 1:32.4. A very, very slow lap for Don at this stage of the race that he doesn't really need. Doesn't need to be making those mistakes, not with Pete having so much pace in this car and potentially being able to chase and pass him come at the end of the race. If he makes any more of those mistakes, it's not what he needs. Brady Buchanan has yet another moment as well. It's just into turn 4, he does the same thing he has before. Too much curb this time and just loops the back of the car. It gets unsettled. Pete Edwards now has gained almost half a second on this lap. So this could be another PB, another fastest lap of the race for Pete Edwards. He is really, really pushing in this car to try and catch Don. The time is slowly slipping away from Don Pittman as Pete Edwards is pushing and pushing. Using every inch of this track to try and set the fastest lap of the race. It's not a new personal best. It's not a new fastest lap, but it is still 2/10 come the end of the lap quicker than Don Pittman. So definitely pushing hard is Pete Edwards. He's pulling away from Liam. It's now 12 seconds back to Liam Haycock, who has another 25 seconds back to Kyra Krassenberg. It's looking like the top 3 is pretty secured come the end of this race. But Liam's final pit stop might be the longest of the lot. He did only pit on lap 17 to start his first pit stop. He put himself well and truly out of sync with everybody else in that first pit stop, so he might have a big invoice to pay come the third and final pit stop based on the fuel usage that he's been getting. Liam now draws in a little bit of time. He's had a really quick lap this one. This has been a really quick lap for Liam. He's gained about 0.5 of a second, but it has dropped off once again coming into this last sector because he is in the GT1 car, so it is a very big, bulky Corvette, not as nimble as these Corvette GTEs at the front, which are able to take that middle sector a lot quicker than Liam is himself. Don Pittman has a new personal best over 1:29.724. Only 0.03 of a second quicker than than Pete Edwards on that lap. So very, very close lap times. As you can see visually, the gap of there goes Don Pittman into turn 4 as we were coming out of turn 3 from Pete Edwards. I apologize. I'm going to just have to step away for just a moment. Switch to Dan Bartush and watch him for a lap as I use the bathroom. as we approach the final stint of this race. Just about to break into the final hour. 2 hours down. And only one penalty from the first lap of the race. This has been a very, very clean race, all things considered. A couple little spins here and there. But so far, it has been very, very clean. Dan Bartosz with another lockup into turn 10. He's really struggling with turn 10 and getting this car to pull up into that corner. As Liam Haycock has another accident. Oh, wow, what did he do there? Coming down the front straight. As he goes up, oh, he touches the outside wall and has an absolutely monumental accident for Liam. He was running so well in P3 and he's just put himself out of the running in the final hour of the race. It's not the way you want to see, but Liam's had to return back to the pit lane. That's very, very unfortunate. He was having such strong recovery drive, just touches that outside wall and ends up in a very, very big accident. We go back to Pete Edwards, still trying to chase down Don Pittman, who has set a new personal best of 1:29.6 on the previous lap. Does he improve on this lap? Because he has got a bigger gap. This time round, he does not improve, so it looks like Pete actually made a lot more ground coming towards the end of that lap. He does. He makes another 2/10 back on Don Pittman. Edwards still 7.6, 7.4 away from Don Pittman. It's gone back to very status quo ever since Don Pittman made that tiny, tiny little accident. Wasn't anything major, but it was just enough that Pete was able to close in another few seconds on the back of him, but hasn't been able to make any more progress since then. They've been running very, very similar lap times, going back and forth as who's been quicker on each lap. Another 40 seconds back to Kyra. But that's okay, because Kyra now able to just consolidate a P3 ahead of Dan by about 6 seconds. Seems like Liam's race might be done from this point. That damage was huge. A massive accident. Very, very unfortunate after such a good recovery and a good strategy to get himself back into P3 on the road and racing very, very well. He had a big gap back to the cars behind. He'd done a very good job at recovering and just had absolutely just a very minor error that seemed to just compound and throw him well and truly off the track. So unfortunate to Liam, but it does mean that it elevates to Kyra Krassenberg back to P3, back to their starting position with Dan Bartosz now up 2 places. Steve McDonald up 3 from start, and Brady Buchanan up 4. A good drive from Brady at the end of all of that. Matthew Young back to where he started as well as Liam now down 4 positions. A very, very rough race for him. So we now are well into the final hour of this race. 56 minutes to go, and Pete Edwards is now within 7 seconds. He's gained time, but he runs wide coming off the track at the end of the lap, and he loses about 0.3 of a second coming onto the front straight. That could very well be enough that stops him from chasing down Don Pittman. That was a very, very wide moment for Pete Edwards. He now goes back to where he was at 7.4 seconds back. He did lose a lot of time, but he was faster on that lap, so that time is ebbing and flowing very, very well. They're very much even as to where they sit on the track. Don Pittman still going into turn 4 as Pete exits turn 3. Kyra slowly but surely working their way further and further away from Dan Bartush, Steve McDonald in P5, Freddie Buchanan in P6, Liam Haycock back out on track now in P7. Even after that accident, he's still doing very well. Matthew Young in P8 and the final car running on track of PJ Whiteman. Our retirement of Tim Sullivan, Cooper Cotterill and Harry Arendt is very unfortunate. We lost those 3 drivers, but we still have 9 cars running on track. So well done to all of them still running. Pete Edwards now brought that gap back down another 3/10 going into the last corner. He's gaining time once again, but it seems that Don's car is a lot better on corner exit out of that last corner initially and gains a little bit of time running down this front straight that Pete has to then make up with. It seems to be a faster top end car on Pete's side, so he does gain a little bit coming down towards turn 1. This time it was Don Pittman who was slightly faster by about 0.08 of a second, so not much in it, but it was enough that he was able to build a little bit more of a gap, get a little bit closer, get a little bit further. But now Pete Edwards 0.3 quicker coming into turn 4 here. Back within 7 seconds. This could be the lap that he catches. He's now 6.5 seconds. Don got an issue. No, he's now back up. So it seems that Don's car very good in different places, that Pete's able to gain more time in other places. Very, very similar in where they, very different in where they find their lap time, as now Pete slowly dropped back towards that 7 seconds behind again. And if he can keep chipping away, he should be able to catch up to the back of Don by the end of this race, potentially. So, coming back on to the front straight. He's now 0.2 closer coming through this lap. Pete Edwards, slowly but surely, drawing in the lead. Kyra Krassenberg staying about that 42 seconds behind. Very, very close. PJ Whiteman comes in for their 3rd and final compulsory pit stop. Still one more pit stop to go for all of the top 6 cars. John runs it a little wide at turn 4. Allows Pete to gain that little bit of extra time again. Always through turns 4 through to 8 that Pete seems to gain a lot of his time through this section compared to Don. Seems to be a little bit better through the middle sector this time. Gaining a little bit more time coming through the sector, so he might be a little bit closer come the end of this lap. A little bit of a wiggle coming out of turn 10. Nothing major, doesn't upset the car too much. Still 6.3, he's gained a lot of time this lap. It could be a new fastest lap of the race for Pete Edwards. 21 laps into his stint. The lower fuel, the sun is setting, the headlights are now shining on the track. We're getting close to a nighttime finish here. Pete Edwards comes across the line for a 1:29.7 compared to Don Pittman's 1:30.4. A big time difference that time round. Don must have made a big mistake for Pete to catch that much time up. It's a very quick lap for Pete that time around. Kyra Krassenberg seems to have consolidated into P3. Very comfortable, almost 10 seconds. It's about 9 seconds, so very comfortable 9 seconds over Dan Bartush. Without a major incident, it should be pretty comfortable for Kyra to claim that P3 here. Dan Bartush with a very good drive for P4, even with those tiny little mistakes. A P4 is not a bad drive for Dan Bartush, and rounding out the top 5 of a Steve McDonald with 22 seconds is pretty comfortable in that spot at the moment as well. So the times, other than this front two, where the times are ebbing and flowing, it's almost a locked positions for everybody else. Don Pittman now coming down towards the start line. Pete Edwards within 6 seconds now. He is gaining more and more time on the back of Don. It's getting closer and closer. Don, that's a 130.3. Pete now coming across the line, does a 129.9. So again, big time difference. Pete a lot quicker in this final stint compared to, well, this stint compared to Don. So it all comes down to, because there is that 5-lap difference in their pit strategies, does that make a difference for the pit timer enough that Don can secure this race or not? Or has Pete done enough that he can pit and still put about the same amount of fuel in as Don to get to the end and be a much closer fight come the end of this race? It all comes down to their fuel saving, their fuel numbers, their strategy, and see where this puts them. Go back and have a look at Steve McDonald, who is now looking at the back of PJ Whiteman and Liam Haycock driving down further. Liam trying to do his best to recover whatever positions he can after his massive accident coming down here into turn 1, where he tapped the outside wall and spat himself to the inside wall. PJ Whiteman just moving out of the way for Steve McDonald. A lot of cars just sort of running off the track at the moment, using the track limits as much as they possibly can. Edwards now 5.2 seconds off the back of Don Pittman. He is slowly but surely closing this gap down. This is very much going to come down to their fuel strategies for the dash to the finish line, with one compulsory pit stop left to go. The track getting darker and darker very, very quickly. Lights shining more and more on this track as the sun sets around Interlagos for the GT Masters Interlagos 3-hour race. It's been a very, very competitive race for the most part. A lot of good little battles happening around through the first couple of stints. We now get into this final stint. Everybody sort of seems to settle into their own rhythm, doing their own thing, and just trying to make it to the end. Still one more pit stop for everybody in the top 5. As we now have Kyra Krasenberg come in for their third and final pit stop. Only 19 laps into the stint, so a much shorter stint than I was expecting them to do. But there is only 45 minutes to go, so they should be able to make it to the end by filling up. I think that is what they're looking at, is they can make it to the end by filling up with fuel now. they'll be able to get to the end of this race without any issues. Yeah. Go back and have a look at Brady Buchanan coming up onto Kyra Krassenberg in the pit lane. It's nice yellow headlights from the GT1 Corvettes look beautiful as they come round down the front straight. Kyra still in the pit lane as Brady goes past now. Still, Brady, he had to do another pit stop as well, so isn't a positional loss for Kyra compared to if Liam were to go by, but Liam's still 32 seconds off the back after having that monumental accident only about 9 laps ago. Brady doing well, currently P5, essentially P6 after his third and final pit stop. Pete Edwards still at about that 5 seconds behind Don Pittman, but slowly and surely drawing more and more time out of the back of his opponent. Now, not even the full length of the back straight between them. So Pete Edwards definitely getting closer, definitely a threat to Don Pittman, who was untouchable for the first 2 hours of this race. And now he's feeling the pressure that is Pete Edwards after this man has jumped into the car. They've still got one pit stop to go. Liam now only 20 seconds behind Kyra Krassenberg. Definitely got a chance to catch and potentially take away that position from Kyra. So he's still not out of this yet. Even after that massive accident, he's still in this race for the podium, which is absolutely insane. If he can get a good run to the line, he could potentially take at least a P4 out of this race. So he has done a phenomenal job at recovery driving this race. He has had probably some of the worst luck I've seen all race, and he's still able to race for a potential top 5 position come the end of this race. So he has done very, very well to get this far. Very, very wide as he exits out of turn 3, using every inch of the road trying to catch Kyra now. He really, really wants this position from Kyra. He is giving everything he has and more. He's pushing this car to the absolute limit to make sure that he can get home and get to the end of this race. Don Pittman has another incident. He slows down again, and now Pete Edwards gains another 2 seconds. Kyra Krassenberg has a bit of a spin. Not too bad. Not too much time lost there, but definitely not what they wanted when they were trying to keep Liam at bay. I don't know what happened to Don Pittman. He's definitely had a lockup somewhere, because Pete Edwards has gained about 3 seconds on him this lap, and now he's definitely going to be feeling the pressure as Pete Edwards is only 2 seconds back from the race lead after almost 2 hours, 20 minutes. This is coming down to the final stop, the splash and the dash, the final compulsory pit stop, and seeing who has the better overall pace towards the end of this race. As now Don Pittman comes into the pit lane. He pits earlier than Pete. Pete now going to have to keep his pace up, try and push as fast as he can, make up that 2 seconds while Don is in the pits and on the colder tires, because Don Pittman will have cold tires on pit exit, and Pete Edwards is still on his fresh, warm tires. This is the time that he needs to make up 2 seconds, potentially on the in lap or on a new fastest lap of the race. He has to push as hard as he can while this track darkens considerably. Liam now within 20 seconds of Kyra Krassenberg, so he is now closing in on a potential podium for this race, as long as he can keep it in front of Dan Bartush after Dan's third and final pit stop, who has only got a 5-lap difference to Liam, but Liam also had that accident and he's probably running extra fuel because he had to run more fuel to get to the end than he would have liked to use. But now, Pete Edwards coming back around to the front straight to start lap 92 of this race. Almost 100 laps over this 3 hours already. He stays out another lap. He's trying to take advantage of these warm tires. He's going long, trying to make this as long of a stint as he possibly can. The less time he has to spend on cold tires, the less fuel he has to put in at the end of this race, the better for him. So now we're starting to see the strategy come into it for Pete Edwards to see if he can make up that 2 seconds, because there in front of him is Don Pittman, a lap behind because of the compulsory pit stop timer. So this is where it comes down to, can Pete push faster, catch this man, and put him a complete lap down to give Pete Edwards the chance that he needed to take the win from the untouchable that was Don Pittman for 2 hours of this race. And in the last hour, he's come undone, feeling the pressure of Pete Edwards being faster and faster and clawing that time down and down from the back of his car. Now, Kyra Krassenberg has put in a big gap over Liam Haycock again. They're now up over 20 seconds again. But in the pit lane comes Dan Bartush from P2. He was P4 on the road before all of the pit stops began to happen. So this will come down to, does he have the gap over Liam Haycock? Because Liam might be able to jump himself up to P4 on track after these pit stops. So Pete Edwards goes another lap, stays out 31 laps on these tires. He is pushing for the long game. He is closing in on Don Pittman. He's closer again on this lap, coming down towards turn 4 as Don still struggles to get the tire temp into those tires. He's losing more and more time to Pete Edwards behind. This will be very, very close come the end of this race. We now jump back to Liam Haycock, who is closing in on the back of Dan Bartush, who's still in the pit lane. Ira Krassenberg passes Dan Bartush now. Dan's still sitting on the pit box. Liam closing in quickly. Not enough. He's still 11 seconds back from the back of Dan Bartush. But we know that Liam was a lot quicker at times in this race than Dan, so he might be able to use this last half hour to catch up to Dan, while Dan's still coming out on low tire pressure tires. Now, the big question, Pete Edwards into the pit lane. Did he do enough to keep Don Pittman behind him? We're going to sit with Pete in the pit lane for now. Wait for Don to come back round. See if it was enough for Pete to jump him in the pit cycle by going long on this stint. As we look further, a little bit further back, and Liam now about 9 seconds off the back of Dan Bartush, so this is very much still a chance for Liam to get P4 on the road. If he can keep this pace up, he will catch Dan Bartush. He will potentially get P4 on the road. After all of the issues he's gone through this race, he will end up in P4, which is an amazing recovery drive. Steve McDonald comes up now to take the race lead overall, but yet to do another pit stop. The question is, has Pete Edwards done enough to jump Don Pittman in the pit cycle? There goes Steve McDonald. Now, here comes Don Pittman. 3 seconds, 1 second. It's going to be very close. Pete Edwards comes out. He's still about 2 seconds back from Don Pittman, but now Pete's the one on the cold tires and probably going to lose the time on pit exit to Don Pittman. So it looks like Don has done enough to retain the lead for the last half hour of this race. But will it be enough that he can keep Pete Edwards, the man on fresh tires, who's been absolutely rapid through his stint now, to keep him at bay? Has he done enough to maintain the win? Liam Haycock now, about 8 seconds off the back of Dan Bartush. That's still a chance for Liam to get P4 on the road. Brady Buchanan and Steve McDonald are not in this picture. They've still got a third pit stop to do. They're out of this. This comes down to, can Liam catch Dan Bartush, as well as dealing with, and can Pete Edwards, now 3 seconds back, almost 4 seconds back from Don Pittman, does he have enough to catch Don Pittman after his tires come up on pressure? Now Pete Edwards starting to draw that time back down. He's back under 4 seconds. Looks like he's got the tire temp up a little bit better than Don Pittman could. Track considerably darker than when we started now. Getting into the nighttime, very close to nighttime to end this race. 32 minutes on the clock. Liam Haycock 8.2 seconds back from Dan Bartush. They've kind of gone into a stalemate now that Dan's got tire pressure into his car again. Liam isn't gaining time hand over fist. Big question is, Pete with a big wobble coming into turn 11 and 12. He's lost another 2 seconds. That might be enough for Don Pittman to retain the lead and win this race. He might have just thrown it enough away. He wasn't gaining the time quick enough without Don making the accidents, making the mistakes of locking up. So this all comes down to, was that the mistake that costs Pete Edwards this race? Because he has the pace to win, but he doesn't have so much more hand over fist pace than Don Pittman that he can just drive up to the back of him. They're very, very even. Liam Haycock is having the same issue with Dan Bartush. He is slightly quicker, but he doesn't have hand over fist pace to just drive up and range up onto the back of his car. So two very different battles for very different types of cars, all within the same class. Both for either P4 on the road or the overall win. Both very, very exciting after all of these pit strategies, 2.5 hours of racing. And it's come down to this final stint and who has the better outright pace in this last stint. go back and look at Kyra Krasenberg now coming up onto the back of Matthew Young, who is P8 and only one lap down. Done very, very well for the amount of times he's gone off track. Liam now 7.7 seconds off the back of Dan Bartush. He's closing that gap slowly but surely. Pete Edwards just not able to bring that pace back that he had in that previous stint. The track change might not be enough for him. He's now back down to 5.3 seconds, so he still has a good chance of doing that. Liam Haycock 7.2 seconds off the back of Dan Bartush now. But Dan dropping off the back of Kyra, just not able to catch up to get that P3 overall. So Kyra looking pretty comfortable in P3. Matthew Young has yet another spin. He's just not had a good night. It's been a rough afternoon of racing for Matthew Young, but he's doing his best. He's not giving up. He's still driving. He's sitting in P8. He's done very, very well. Liam Haycock now within 7 seconds at the back of Dan Bartush. Now Liam coming up on the back of Matthew Young. Having just recovered from that spin, so Liam now doing everything in his power to catch the back of Dan Bartush's car before this final half hour is up. Liam in deep and he spins. He's thrown away that chance of catching Dan Bartush. He's now over 10 seconds away again, and I don't think he has the time to catch back up. Not with the pace that he was catching. He would need too much time to catch back up to the back of Dan Bartush, or he needs Dan to make another big mistake. So unfortunately, I think Liam is going to be P5 on the road at the end of this after everyone comes in for their pit stops. Still Brady Buchanan and Steve McDonald to come in for their final stops of the race. That is unfortunate. It looks like Liam might have just given up on that one. As into the pit lane comes Steve McDonald now finally. So he pits for his final pit stop of the race. Pete Edwards now back out to 6 seconds behind, so he might be only settling for P2 today. This might be where Pete Edwards finishes this race, P2. After a very solid attempt at catching the back of Don Pittman, but Don might have just done enough to secure this win. It's not over yet, but the time isn't looking good for Pete to catch up at this rate. He needs to pull something big out. He needs a big gap time. He needs Don to get caught with traffic or to have a little bit of a moment for him to catch back up, but at the moment it's looking like Don is pretty safe in the overall win position here. As we see now Steve McDonald dropping back down the order, dropping back behind Liam Haycock to probably be P6 at the end of all of this. Does come out very close to Liam Haycock. So there goes Liam, and here is Steve. So Steve still has a chance at getting P5 if he can pull something out here. He has a very, very good shot at catching Liam and taking that P5 away from him. So not all is lost yet for Steve McDonald. Done very, very well in that second stint. Going long, hitting just now on lap 98, coming out on lap 99, just so that he can potentially run it to the end now. It'll be just over 100 laps for this race. We go back up. Pete Edwards still 5.3 seconds, 5.4 seconds behind Dom Pittman. It's looking pretty status quo here. Kyra Krassenberg still in that P4 at the moment. But again, Brady Buchanan still has another pit stop to do. He last pit 29 laps ago on lap 70. So he still needs to come back into the lane. It's looking pretty status quo at the moment out there. Liam slowly but surely drawing Dan back in, but I don't think it's enough for Liam to catch Dan Bartush by the end of this race to get P4 on the road. As we go on board for a lap with Kyra Krassenberg here in this Porsche RSR. The blue lights coming out now for this part of the race as the sky darkens considerably. You can see how little light is in the sky now and how much they're relying on these headlights. You can still see the track, but you really want these headlights so that you can see your braking markers, see where the apexes are. It makes that visibility much easier. We get the Porsche downshifts down into turn 4 and 5, coming out into turns 6 and 7. The beautiful look and listen to the sound of this Porsche as it goes around the Interlagos circuit. It is a beautiful looking Porsche and a very well driven P4 at the moment for Kyra Krassenberg. A good recovery after that start happened. So after being turned at the start line, it is a nice recovery for Kyra Krassenberg to P4, to only be down one spot. But again, I think Brady still one stop to go. So she could still get that P3 on track, which will be phenomenal. A good recovery to get back to the qualifying position after being at the back of the pack, backwards at the start of lap 1 and dropping all of those positions. Liam Haycock now within 10 seconds of Dan Bartush, but again, I don't think he has the time to catch. He's done well so far to get this close, but I don't think it's enough. Pete Edwards now within 5 seconds. He still has a chance of catching for this lead. It's going to be close to see if he can catch to win this race, but he is very close to making this. Now only 20 minutes to go. 2 hours and 40 minutes of this 3 hour done and dusted. The drivers have done very, very well out there. Visibility was getting harder and harder as the sun was setting. You're getting sun in your eyes. You're now losing visibility from the actual light, relying on your headlights. All of these little things that these drivers are contending with, the changing conditions, the changing track temperature, where it's grippy, where it's slippery because there's too much rubber, or there's debris, or there's anything on the outside of the track. They've done very, very well to keep these cars in one piece for the most part and not having big accidents. There goes Don Pittman, and here comes Pete Edwards. Slightly faster on that lap. It's drawing in time. Starting to pull in hand over fist over Don Pittman. It was about this part of the stint last time that he was doing the same thing. So something about this setup just works for Pete Edwards as the fuel starts to go out of this car and the tires start to wear. The car just seems to come alive and he starts to find a lot more pace. A very, very good chance that Pete Edwards could, by the end of this race, be pushing Don Pittman to that start-finish line, and we could have a very, very close finish. A new lap record, new fastest lap of the race, 129.42 for Pete Edwards. He is pushing this car as hard as he can into this nighttime. He really, really wants this win. He is pushing and pushing as hard as he can. Within 4 seconds now of Don Pittman. This is getting closer and closer with every lap. 17 and a half minutes to go. And we're just getting closer and closer to a really, really good finish here. Liam Haycock within 6 seconds now of Dan Bartush. So Dan has made another mistake. Liam gaining a lot of time now. Freddie Buchanan still going out there, but he won't have much fuel to put in. He will still have that compulsory pit stop timer to contend with. He will lose a lot of time to that, but it could be enough that it puts him in front of, say, Steve McDonald. He could still end up in P6 after the pit timer, as well as pit transit and pit stops. It's very, very possible. .3 seconds now, the gap to the leader from Pete Edwards to Don Pittman. Pete really, really pushing. He is consistently 0.2 a lap quicker than Don Pittman. This is adding up very, very nicely to make a good finish to this race. It's now less than 3 seconds between the two of them. Pete Edwards leaving nothing on the table for this one, trying so hard to catch to the back of Don Pittman. Liam Haycock now within 4 seconds of Dan Bartush. So again, even closer there too. Liam, even after that mistake, is now catching. So this is a really, really good chance for Liam to potentially get P4 on the road. Now within 3 seconds of Dan Bartush. Two battles coming very, very close to the last 15 minutes of this race. This is going to be a really, really nice finish to the end of this race. .4 seconds now, Pete Edwards to Don Pittman. He is leaving nothing on the table for this one. Liam, 3.2 seconds back from Dan Bartush. Those are the two battles that we're going to have to the end of this race. As we go over to Liam now. Those beautiful yellow headlights as he goes through in the GT Masters 83 car. Pete Edwards now only 2 seconds back from Dan Pittman, so it's getting closer and closer again. Pete Edwards that time around was about 6/10 quicker, if not more, than he was for Don Pittman, so a lot of time gained on that lap. Liam about 2/10 quicker than Dan Bartush that lap. It's a lot of pace out of this GT Masters 83 car as he runs it through turn 5 into turn 6. Now 3.1 seconds, potentially less than 3 seconds between them as he comes out of turn 6. At turn 7 it is. He's now turn 8, 2.7 seconds behind Dan Bartush. Pete Edwards still about 2.3 seconds behind the lead. So, Don Pittman not letting him have this easy. Pete Edwards is having to work for it to catch him. He's now at like 1.9 seconds behind, 1.9 to 2.2 seconds behind coming onto the front straight. Coming into turn 11 and 12. Liam onto the front straight, 2.8 seconds behind Dan Bartush here. Pete Edwards now, again, only about 2 seconds back from Don Pittman. So he's closing in down through turns 1 and 2 into turn 3. That's the gap. You can see Don Pittman in front. This is getting close with only 12 minutes left of running. The times are coming down. Kyra Krasenberg, pretty confident in P3 there. No one can take that from Kyra, but Liam Haycock, 2 seconds off the back of Dan Bartush. Pete Edwards, less than 2 seconds off the back of Don Pittman. It's all coming down to these final last few little minutes. Kyra Krasenberg had an accident. What's happened to Kyra? Oh no, an absolutely monumental accident for Kyra. That might have just been enough. As now Dan Bartush is only 4 seconds off the back of Kyra. I might have jinxed Kyra there. As we jump back to Kyra going down the front straight. Car definitely not the same as it was. A lot of damage on the back of that car, it seemed like, from that replay. Back of that car is not happy. Dan Bartush still 4.7 seconds behind. Liam Haycock now within 1.5 seconds of Dan Bartush. He is pushing so hard to catch to the back of Dan Bartush. He wants that P4. Liam way out wide. Very, very wide. 1.3 seconds. He's almost within... He was in draft distance now. Coming down through that front straight, Liam is going to be all over the back of Dan Bartush coming down to turn 1. This is getting a lot closer. Kyra just able to keep the car in front enough as we enter the last 10 minutes. Dan only 4 seconds back now, but is it enough for Kyra to be in front? Is Liam going to be fighting Dan enough to keep Kyra in that P3? Pete Edwards now within half a second as they come down into turns 8, 9, and 10. Coming up to turn 10. Pete Edwards all over the back of Don Pittman now for the race lead. They've only got 10 minutes to go now. This is the fight for the race win. As they come down onto the front straight. Pete Edwards in the slipstream of Don Pittman. Liam is now also within a second of Dan Bartush. So the race for P4 is not done yet. Dan Bartush is now... Oh no, Dan and Liam have come together. They've both come together at turn 1. Oh no. What's happened? Oh, Dan's done it by himself. I forced Liam off the track. It's done for Dan. He's done it. Liam's had his own moment though. So now Kyra pretty safe again in that P3 as now Dan is 13 seconds back and Liam 2 seconds back off the back of Dan again. He has to draw that time back in. As we go back to the front, Pete Edwards putting all of the pressure onto Don Pittman with only 8.5 minutes left of running. This is all going to come down to the timing of when does Pete want to make the move to go for the win. Does he have enough overspeed to get the run and get past Don safely? Liam now within a second of Dan Bartush again. So that battle resumes once again, but now Kyra safe in P3. Set 8 minutes to go. Pete in the slipstream of Don once again. Liam and Dan in the background, 3 tenths, 2 tenths. Liam looking up to the inside. Pete had a little look. Liam up the inside of Dan into turn 1. Dan goes out wide. Liam gets through safely. Liam up into P5. Dan has another spin. He went too wide, lost the back of the car once again. Just too much. It was almost a good move to keep it around the outside for Dan, but unfortunately, it's not enough. Liam through, and now Liam 15 seconds from the back of Kyra, but still don't think enough time for Liam to catch with 5 minutes to go. Pete still only half a second off the back of Don Pittman. These two are going to be locked together for the rest of the race. Pete losing about a second that lap. He must have made a mistake. He was right there and he's just lost a second. Maybe the dirty air. But now he's got to work again to gain that 1 second back to get back on the back of Don Pittman. That, or he's just backed off to make sure that he can make it to the end. As Dan Bartush again has another moment. And this time I think hits the incident point limit. As around he goes off the track, well off the track. And that is really, really unfortunate for Dan. He was doing so well, and he's just had a few little slips in the last section of the race. As Dan now has to make his way down through the pit lane and do the drive-through penalty. Pete now 1.8 seconds back. I think he has just backed off and consolidating a P2 at the end of all this. A really, really good drive to get to the back of Don Pittman, but now he just doesn't have the pace. And now we have Steve McDonald and Dan Bartush close together as Dan comes out of the pit lane after serving his drive-through penalty. Steve McDonald around the outside. A good move by Steve, but he's out a little wide. It gives Dan the inside again. Coming into turn 5. They come up to turn 6. Steve able to send it in a little bit deeper. Dan around the outside once again. They stay side by side. Steve finally gets the move done going into turn 8 though. Coming through turn 9, Steve now safely in front of Dan Bartush, but it's not over just yet. Dan Bartush looking at the back of Steve McDonald. He's not going to let him go that easy. Coming into turn 12. Steve McDonald out wide. Bartush follows him. Half a second now. But Dan now has straight line speed down this front straight. Two-tenths of a second. Does he make a move down into turn 1? Yes, he pulls out. Looks up the inside at turn 1. Goes in deep. Almost into the back of Steve McDonald. Steve cuts the curb. Gets a little loose. Now, Dan has a smoother run off the exit to turn 2 into turn 3. Runs it out wide. Steve McDonald goes defensive. He says if you want to pass, you go around the outside this time. Dan tries, can't go as deep as Steve can, but he sticks it around the outside as they go round turn 5. Now, Dan looking again. Now he's been forced back to the outside on 6. Not going to work. Steve stays in front into turn 7. Steve McDonald able to keep it in front, but Dan goes in deep into 8, and that's put him back a little bit further. So now he's got to work just a little bit harder to get back to the back of Steve McDonald. Good race in between these two. Steve putting his car in the right spot, making Dan go the long way around if he wants to get around him. As Liam comes back into the pit lane. Don't know what's happened there with Liam, but he's had to come back through the pits. Must have had to put a splash to get it to the end of the race. As Liam comes back out, he's still clear. Kyra now safe in P3 with 33 seconds back to Liam Haycock. Dan Bartush now back onto the back of Steve McDonald. That straight line speed showing in the big Corvette. As he's chasing down Steve McDonald half a second as they come onto the back straight here. Dan very wide, trying to use every inch of road. 4/10 of a second. He thinks about it. He has a little look. Doesn't commit. But now he's all over the back of Steve McDonald once again. But he gets a little loose on corner exit. Loses that time. Now has to work to catch up again. Pete Edwards now back within a second of Don Pittman. Looks like he's saved that fuel and now he's ready to push again. As we come in the last 1.5 minutes of the race. It'll be 1 to go next time by. We jump on board with Dan Bartush as we chase down Steve McDonald down this front straight and just see the speed difference of this GT1 to the GTE Corvette. So much more speed down the straight, but Steve McDonald goes very, very defensive. Says to Dan, if you want to go around the outside. Dan not confident with that after having those couple of spins going out wide. Runs the normal racing line. Because Steve went defensive, he's lost a lot of speed. Now, Dan all over the back of him again. Runs out wide. Now, gets the run down the back straight. Passes him in the straight line, but Steve able to go deeper once again on the brakes. And Dan goes back around. And that will be the end of that battle. So now, we will go jump back on board with Pete Edwards as we come towards the line. 20 seconds on the clock. This should be the final lap as we go through to the start line. Looking to the right there. To the left, yes, the white flag is out. This is the final lap. 6/10 of a second between the lead as we go into the final lap after 3 hours of racing. This is where it ends. Dan Bartush has another moment. Spins again as he goes through turns 9 and 10. Pete Edwards, now he has about half a lap to go to try and make his way past Don Pittman. He is 6/10 of a second back. Does he have it in him? Is there anywhere he can get the run to get past Don Pittman? He's quicker there into turn 8, coming into turn 9. He's all over the back of Don Pittman now. 4/10 of a second. I don't think he's got enough corners to make the move. He needed the run there. 4/10 of a second still. It looks like it is going to be a win for Pete Edwards. They go through the last corner. Coming through to the line. It is going to be Don Pittman, your winner from Pete Edwards. It comes right to the line. 1/10 of a second between them. Very, very close. They end with 2/10 of a second at the line. Then we go back to P3, which is going to be... It's going to be Kyra Krassenberg as she's just coming down the back straight now. P3, Kyra Krassenberg. P4, Liam Haycock as he comes to the line now. P5 will be Steve McDonald. P6, Dan Bartush. P7 is Brady Buchanan. P8 is Matthew Young. And P9, to round out your final car on the track, is PJ Whiteman. Very, very well done to all of them. As we go through to Kyra to finish off the last lap of the race. Well done to all of them. A very, very well driven race by everybody. Very, very close finish for the win. 2/10 of a second between them. And to round out your podium, Kyra Krassenberg, P3, coming to the line now. Well done to the podium positions. A nice little headlight flash for the podium. Well done. We just jump back a little bit to keep the driving going as they go around the track. So we just wait to see who's coming in for the green room. See who wants to come and chat after that, because that was a really well done race. Can't seem to see anyone. That is unfortunate. but it was nonetheless a really, really good event. Well done to everybody that showed up to drive. Well done to the podium, Don Pittman, Pete Edwards / Jeremy Greentree, and Kyra Krassenberg. And well done to everybody else who showed up.